Welcome to the Hair Metal Podcast here on the Fandom Podcast Network. It's back. It's been too long. And what we like to do here on the Hair Metal Podcast is we like to talk about bands and moments that reach certain levels of popularity and notoriety during the 80s and the early 90s. We'll be looking back, of course, at the music and the bands and all that rock and roll debauchery as we return to the Hair Metal Podcast here. But we got a special episode for you. It's 2022. 35 years ago was 1987, and there was a lot of great bands that not only formed, but also released great albums in 1987. And we're going to talk about the 1987 best rock metal albums, the 35th anniversary of all these. My name is Kevin, and I'll be your host. But before we head to the Hollywood Sunset Strip, hit up Gazzari's, hit the Troubadour, the Roxy, the Cat House, the Whiskey a Go-Go, and go get those drinks and late night dinner at the Rainbow Bar and Grill, hang out with Lemmy, or Rock and Roll Denny's. I'd like to introduce my very special guest for this Hair Metal Podcast. Please welcome Mr. Murf.
Let's go. What's up,
yeah,
Kev?
Baby.
How are you, brother? Glad to be back here on the Hair Metal Podcast.
It is good to have you back. I believe the last time we did this together, I actually did it in the same room you're recording from.
Yes, we did it live right here in the fan cave. That's right. Absolutely. You were in town. You came through. You were on your way to go to see the Raiders play at the Bengals. You were living in Atlanta at the time, and swung through the fan cave, and we did an episode of Raiders Fan Radio live here, and then you allowed me to jump in and do an episode of the Hair Metal Podcast with you again. And so I appreciate you having me back on the show, and always a great time talking a little bit of rock and roll. Kevin Raider Nerd.
And you have to be familiar with your podcast to understand that I started a trend in your studio there that cannot ever be done again, and that is sit in Mosh's chair.
We created an entire bit around the idea that you sat in my uncle, my one of my co-hosts, my Uncle Mosh, is very particular about people sitting in his chair. Kevin was the first one to violate or trespass in said area.
Yes.
And we've turned it into an entire bit since
I think
then.
I owe him a cannoli or something. So, but before we go on, though, I want to talk about you for a second. Of course, this is a Hair Metal Podcast, and it's part of the Fandom Podcast Network. And if you're not familiar with the Fandom Podcast Network, please check it out. We've got a bunch of shows for your favorite fandom. We've got Star Wars, Star Trek, Doctor Who, Highlander. We got our Couch Potato Theater, our favorite movies, Time Warp, where we cover a bunch of movies throughout the entire year. And, of course, we have the Hair Metal Podcast. But Mr. Murf, you're a big Raiders fan, and I think that's how you and I bonded. You got a show here. Tell the listeners and viewers about Raiders Fan Radio.
Yeah, Raiders Fan Radio. Appreciate you asking. Raiders Fan Radio. We just celebrated our 10-year anniversary of podcasting. Now, we've only been doing Raiders Fan Radio proper, this current incarnation of the show, for about 5 years now. Anyways, you could find it on any podcast service. Just search Raiders Fan Radio on any audio feed, or you could find us at youtube.com /Raiders Fan Radio. And what we do with 100% of the money that we make is we give it all away to Raiders related charities, including the Blitnikoff Foundation. So any support you can give us, any thumbs up, any like, any subscribe, any of that stuff helps increase the popularity of our show. And of course, advertising. And again, we give all of that money away. And so there's a picture of the fan cave there. That's our studio, which is my bonus room here at my house. And so, so we appreciate you asking, Kevin. Appreciate anybody out there in Raider Nation. Check us out.
And we do a fun thing here is you and I bonded on the Raiders. We met in Tennessee when I went to go see Raiders Tennessee game. We met there for the first time, and we do these Raiders Fan Radio meetups. And one of the cool things that you have done through Raiders Fan Radio is not just brought together fans that like the Raiders, but you've created this great community around you that have also been helping donating to the cause. And it's really something nice that you've done to help the Blitnikoff Foundation and other Raiders related charities.
Oh, thank you, man. I really appreciate you saying that. And that's been one of the favorite things about our show is that we formed our own nonprofit. And so again, all that money comes to us, and we give it away to the charities, and appreciate all the amazing support that you've given us over the years. Of course, going back to that first tailgate when we met, what was that, 2016 or I believe?
I think so.
something like that. At the Raiders Titans tailgate here in Nashville. And of course, in that last picture there you showed of the meetup we had in Vegas out there for the draft, that was amazing, and got to meet your lovely new bride and a bunch of your good friends that you brought over to the meetup, and then of course a lot of our listeners that showed up. So yeah, it was a lot of fun, and those are my co-hosts there. So that's my real life Uncle Mosh there. My best friend Swag Jeff next to me, and then on the end is our good buddy QB Jeff. And so the four of us are the kind of the guys that hold it down for Raiders Fan Radio each and every week. And so yeah, appreciate you asking again, and appreciate any support. Hey, there's us. That's
speaking of meetups here, this is us in 2020. The picture was taken when we were, I think it was when the Saints game in 2020, when there was no one allowed in the stadium. So we went to this Raiders bar here and hung out, and then we did some podcasts together.
We sure did, man. That was a lot of fun. Yeah, we did a live broadcast there from the Stage Door Casino for the Raiders home opener, and that was great. And you of course, in the original Raider Mando, you know what I mean? A lot of people have taken that, but Kevin you were the Raider Mando before the Mando was the Mando.
This is true, man.
This is back when people didn't know what a Mando was, and they would just call you Raider Boba Fett. They didn't even know
I got a lot of Boba Fett. It was great, but if you're look, you know what's really cool about your podcast is that you don't even have to be a Raiders fan to enjoy the chemistry and the fun, because you have fans listening and watching you guys and giving you money that aren't even Raider fans.
Yeah, true. We have Broncos fans and Chiefs fans, and we have lots of folks that tune in because we call it a lighter side journey into the dark side. Of course, that's a play on our Star Wars fandom as well, but it's just a lighthearted goof. You know what I mean? We just have a lot of fun. Yes, we talk about Raiders football, but we like to play. And so anyways, so appreciate you again having me on tonight. Look forward to talking some hair metal, and as much praise and well wishes you just gave around our show, I return those wholeheartedly back to you and the Fandom Podcast Network. You guys know what a huge fan I am of yours and of Kyle's and a multitude of the shows on your network. And so that's why I'm always like, I talk about the Raiders all the time, so it's thrilling to me to get on a podcast and talk about other things that I'm interested in, like nerd stuff, or in this case, hair metal, rock and roll stuff, which I'm a nerd for that too. So it's great. So,
and you're a big movie nerd too. You've been on our Couch Potato Theater. I think we did a Bill and Ted's double feature before the third movie came out. So it's always fun to have you on, and obviously we're huge Raider fans, but it's nice to talk about other nerddom, and that's why I'm glad you're on here. So
I did we did the Marvel thing one joined your Star Wars guys one time. That was great, man.
Yeah, we had the anti-Super Bowl Star Wars special on your network because we weren't fans of who was in the Super Bowl, so we were going to boycott it and just do like a Star Wars podcast.
It was great. So it was when the Niners played the Chiefs, and we were like, we can't win by either one of these teams winning, so we hate them both, so we're not going to watch the game. And you and me and Aaron the Q-Dog Raider got on and talked Star Wars for an hour and 45 minutes. It was an absolute blast.
That was fantastic. And Aaron the Q-Dog, oh my God, I love his Star Wars Legends fandom. It's fantastic. I love that guy.
Absolutely. He's got some deep cuts when it comes to Legends in there.
Yeah. Well, as I mentioned earlier, the Hair Metal Podcast has returned. I've been a little busy. And this is episode 8.
Married.
Yeah, I got married and did stuff, and I do all these other podcasts, and I got to take a break from some things for a while, but I was itching to do this. In 87, we're talking about 1987 best rock metal albums. And we're going to be, obviously talking about the ones that kind of fit our category here. I'll go into that a little bit later. But I want to kind of check one other thing out first there, Murf. I want to ask you something. I always like to see if you're wearing a metal rock t-shirt or something like that. What you got there, man?
Well, yeah. Well, I got to have one for today. So you can't really see the logo of the band. It's on the playing card there. You can see the Dirty Honey logo. So I had a multitude of, I've had some good rock and roll shirts. Now the concerts are starting to happen again. I had a nice little, there we go. So I had a handful of different shirts that I was going to wear, but I landed on this one because Dirty Honey is my new favorite band. I mean, I've seen them now twice in the past couple of years. And for those of you that are fans of this old school rock and roll, hard rock, bluesy hard rock, and leaning into heavy metal. They are an absolute amazing band. They are, they're from Southern California. They hold down that LA, again, that bluesy rock and roll sound. A lot of influences you can hear in them from, bands like Aerosmith and whatnot. It's like, but it's what I like about them though, is that they remind me of, and I'm a huge Black Crowes guy. I love the Black Crowes, one of my all-time favorite bands. And I remember when the Black Crowes came out, there was one of the criticisms of the band was it's a very original band without an original sound, because when you listen to Black Crowes, you hear a lot of like Exile on Main Street, Rolling Stones era kind of thing. These guys are kind of that same thing, but it's not bad. But they definitely harken back to that kind of like that Aerosmithy, 70s Aerosmith, and it's phenomenal. The musicianship, the singing ability, everything, for the vocals, the lyrics, it just brings you back to a different time. But it's not a gimmick. It's not a joke. These guys are just doing really good, really rootsy freaking rock and roll, man. And it's guitar heavy, you big drums, big vocals. Like I said, it's just they are an absolute blast. They crush live. I saw them, speaking of the Black Crowes, I saw them open for the Black Crowes.
Oh my God.
Which was amazing. Yes. And then the last show I went to, they were the openers for Wolfgang WVH, which is Wolfgang Van Halen's band, right?
Right.
Mammoth. Not Wolfgang, Mammoth WVH.
Yes.
Well, Mammoth pulled out of the tour and it was just Dirty Honey. So I saw Dirty Honey play a full show in Nashville for a relatively small crowd. It was probably, I don't know, because the place was only big enough they were only planned for the Mammoth show versus like the Black Crowes show that was in a big theater. So there was probably 1,000 people there. Kevin blew me away. So freaking good. These guys are amazing. Go check them out. Dirty Honey.
Where are they from?
They're LA. They're in LA.
Okay.
And one of their big songs is called California Dreamin'. It's an absolute just
soul, dude.
Oh, dude.
I'll go support them. I'll buy their stuff on iTunes, whatever. And I know because Eddie Trunk was talking about them and praising them. So that's awesome, man.
Very so cool. Good. And this latest album is just amazing. There's it's just like it reminds me so much of like an old school rock album where you got like 9 killers and then you got a ballad, but the ballad isn't like a ballad. It's more of a bluesy ballad.
Nice, very nice.
Singers and stuff. Like,
that's cool, dude. That's really cool.
Show on Dirty Honey. These guys, they're the best band since I don't know when. I mean, it's been a long time since we've had a rock band show up. Yeah. So anyways, I'll shut up.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Now I'm excited about it. You got me excited about it. So I'll check out Dirty Honey. When it comes to t-shirts, I had to first of all represent them. We got to wear the hair metal t-shirt, but I did bring a shirt that is one of my favorite shirts that I covet, and it's original. I got it at the show, and I take care of my shirts, and we're going to be talking about these bands tonight. And that is, hold on, let me go ahead and get a little close up here. Check this out. I've got Metallica and Guns N' Roses tour 1992.
Bro.
And on the back, it shows the tour dates here, right? Okay. And I saw this in Pasadena at the Rose Bowl. And keep in mind, Murf, this was the tour. This was after James Hetfield got injured in Montreal with the pyrotechnics. Mm-hmm. And there was that whole issue with, Guns N' Roses not going on like sooner. And there was a riot and all that kind of stuff. And so he had his arm bandaged and his guitar tech was playing. But the cool thing about it was I had such good tickets for that. That's when you would actually call up Ticketmaster and I did that, and me and 3 other buddies got really good seats. I think we were like 11 rows back. And check this out. Andrew Dice Clay opened up for him, followed by Motorhead.
Wow.
And then Metallica went on, killed it, and then Guns N' Roses went on after that. So I had to share that.
Wow. That's legit, dude. That is legit.
Okay, so I got to ask you, any recent concert updates that you've been to or were going to?
Oh my gosh, yeah. So unfortunately, not because of the band, but Dirty Honey was the last show I saw. That was back in March, I guess it was. But the unfortunate part of it is that I was supposed to go see Motley Crue, Def Leppard, Poison, and Joan Jett.
The stadium tour.
the stadium tour.
Last night, where last night?
I'm sorry. So last night, Nissan Stadium in Nashville. So I'm from the Bay Area originally, but I live just outside of Nashville, Tennessee now. And yes, I was supposed to go to that show with my buddy Jimmy, who I've been to a lot of. Him and I are childhood friends, and we've seen Aerosmith together, seen Van Halen, we've seen Def Leppard, we've seen a million shows together. And so, anyways, we were gonna kind of like, it's been a long time since we've been to a show together. And we're like, hey, let's go. This is perfect. It's our era. It's, So I woke up yesterday. I'd been feeling kind of run down. I woke up yesterday. I was supposed to go to the concert, feeling really, really run down, and I went and took a COVID test and positive, so I didn't get a chance to go to the show.
So they were testing for COVID, obviously, to get in, right?
No, I was testing myself for COVID.
Okay.
I felt like crap. I felt like crap, and I'm like, I can't. Like, I think something's going on. So, and I didn't want to give it to him or anybody else, even though the show's outside. I don't want to do that. So I had to pull out. So I didn't get a chance to go last night. I was in touch with him today quite a bit, though. And he said it was, for the most part, great. Unfortunately, Bret Michaels got sick, was hospitalized last moment. Apparently he had a reaction to some medication. Of course, he's been battling diabetes for a million years.
Yeah, he's diabetic. Yeah.
And so he had a reaction with one of his meds. So they had to pull out at the last minute. He said Joan Jett crushed it, though, which is, I love Joan Jett. And I probably missed that more than anything last night, was missing her set. He said Def Leppard was very, very good. Played their new songs, played Kick, that new release that they have.
I'm going to guess good. Phil Collin, the guitar player, had his shirt off after the first song.
He goes, man, for a bunch of old dudes, like, they're still ripped,
Yeah.
Feels like Derek Carr. Just sleeves are never a go, let alone.
That dude takes care of himself. So yeah,
absolutely. And then, he said Motley was okay. Vince hasn't been able to sing real well for like 20 years.
Yeah.
And I watched back some of the highlights and things of this last tour. It's not good. It's there, and look, and I applaud these bands for still going out and, look, and no one loves, we're going to end up talking about tonight. No one loves Motley Crue more than me. But I think at this point, it's probably time for them to go ahead and hang it up. For at least my buddy Jimmy said, he goes, the band was really loud. They were drowning out the vocals. And I'm like, well,
I wonder why.
Probably trying on purpose, sadly enough. You know what I mean? And again, that's not a hater take at all.
No, I know. I went to go see them in what was it? 2000, I want to say 8, I think, or 7 in LA when they got back together and they were doing this tour. And that's when I started noticing that Vince didn't quite have it, because he was getting like, and then he would like let the crowd sing the chorus.
Exactly. Yeah. I'm like, well, Vince, I can do that.
But the show was still fun, and it was fun to be there with them and stuff like that. So I'm sorry you missed it, man.
Yeah, me too, man. I'm really bummed, because that was, how many more times are we going to get a chance to see, these kinds of bands coming through and performing at a high level, even though as much as, like I just said, about Motley, but like Joan Jett, like that's someone I've never seen.
Me too. That is one of the draws to me. If I hadn't seen Poison back in 2017, and then hadn't seen the stadium tour with Journey and Def Leppard, I would have probably really tried to see this show. Def Leppard kills it. They put on a great show. They sounded great as well. At least that was like a few years ago. So I'm assuming not much has changed. So, and they released a new album too, which kind of rocks as well. So. Do you plan on hitting any shows coming up?
Yeah, I've got a few on the list. So again, being outside of Nashville, I get, tons of opportunities to go to different shows. My girlfriend and I were going to go see Earth, Wind and Fire next month. That's going to be cool. We're going to go see them. But Jack White's coming through, which is, I'm a big Jack White guy. So we're going to go see him. But yeah, there's always, a million shows on the docket. Not so much in terms of like the hair metal theme,
right.
Not as many coming through, but yeah, I'm always up for a good show. And of course, and I'll travel if Dirty Honey comes anywhere close. Like, I'm on the road to go see them.
That's good to hear, because you sold me on them. The last show I saw was actually a postponed show from late 2021. Was earlier this year. I went to go see the Struts. And
they're great. I saw them open for the Foo Fighters.
Yeah, they're now headlining their own like theater tours right now, and they were supposed to play, I think it was in October of 2019, but the guitar player got COVID, And so they had to reschedule early 2022 this year. And the venue I've been to many times to see great bands. And it was great because it wasn't too crowded and they just rocked and killed it. And they they had a great time. And so they're a lot of fun. And I'm hoping to go to that same venue because Billy Idol's playing with Steve Stevens again in a few months. So I'm hoping to go see that show. So we'll see about that. So
that is very cool.
Okay, so no, go ahead.
I just looked on my look because I have to keep notes because I'm an old guy. I'm middle-aged now, so I have to keep notes because I can't remember things. So we're going to see Earth, Wind, Fire, as I mentioned. We're also going to go see Pearl Jam. We'll be here in September. And then in October, Greta Van Fleet will be in town, which I do like.
Gotcha.
Those are young bands. They're another one that we're big fans.
Nashville is such a great music town. I love Nashville. Great.
It really is. It's the best. There's always somebody in town doing something cool. Yeah.
So this is a kind of get to know you questionnaire section. Of course, I know you, Murf, but I want to find out musically what's going on in your life. And I want to ask you a question here real quick because I thought this would be kind of funny. I want to know, and I'm going to tell you as well. Okay. What was little Metal Murf and Metal Kevin doing in 1987? Now, before you answer that question, this is the Hair Metal Podcast. A lot of great bands released albums in 1997, but we're not going to talk about those other bands. For example, there's U2, Joshua Tree. I hear that album did all right.
Yeah, sort of. Yeah.
One of the best rock albums come out of the 80s, but no, they don't qualify for this podcast. REM, Document, no. Fleetwood Mac, Tango in the Night, nope. Bruce Springsteen, Tunnel of Love, nope. Michael Jackson's Bad, nope. George Harrison's Cloud 9, remember that one? That one came out. Foreigner came out. They could kind of, but they're more of kind of a little bit older arena tour band, but they kind of led the way for these bands. One of my favorite albums came out this year. Introducing the Hardline, according to Terrence Trent D'Arby. Remember that guy?
Yes, I do.
That came out. Rush's Hold Your Fire came out also. As much as we love Rush, not hair metal, but they did lay the way there. So a lot of Sinead O'Connor, by the way, The Lion and the Cobra came out. Deep Purple too. Sorry. Warren Zevon. We're not going to talk about you. Jethro Tull. I got a finger for you for stealing someone's Metallica Grammy. I'm just going to tell you right now.
Amen, brother.
Love you, Roger Waters, but we're not going to talk about you, so I'm sorry. We are going to talk about hair metal. And a lot of because 80s was the year of metal. Not just hair metal. We got speed metal, thrash metal, glam metal, and that's all kind of the genre that we like to touch on in this podcast here. So I want to ask you, Murf, what was little Murf Metalhead doing in 1987? I remember you talking about your early Poison concert, but how old were you in 87, if you don't mind saying? And what musically was going on in your life during that time when it came to metal?
So I'm 14, so I'm right before my very first concert. And my very first concert was Poison opening up for David Lee Roth. So it's like right leading up to that. And this was a very transitional year for me, personally, for musically. So like growing up, I was really into the music of the 60s. My parents were hippies from the Bay Area. And so I grew up on, Janis and Jimmy and Jim Morrison and, the Stones and the Beatles and all that kind of stuff, Zeppelin and all that. Okay. Then as we got into the 80s, I found Van Halen. Like Van Halen 1984 was one of the first albums I ever bought on my own. And I found Van Halen, and I was the biggest Van Halen junkie on the planet. Everything my rock and roll world revolved around Van Halen. And I believe it was 86 when 5150 came out. The first one was Sammy Hagar. And I was in love with that album. And I was all about Van Halen and that hard rock sound and all that. In 1987, I went and visited some cousins that lived in Riverside, California, not far from you, Kevin. And I was in my cousin Brett's room, and he said, "Hey, I got a new record. I want you to listen to it," because he was kind of a metal guy. And we were listening to we were dabbling in Great White, like that kind of stuff. He drops the needle on Appetite for Destruction, and my entire rock and roll world changed in one fell swoop in terms of the direction that I was going in, where I was in this Van Halen-y, old school 60s thing with some, glam portions of it in there. Then you get into, and I'll wait to really rhapsodize about it because I'm sure we're going to talk a ton about it later. But this album to me transitioned and transcended so much of what was going on in hard rock and heavy metal that, again, it in one needle, as soon as those first freaking the riff to Welcome to the Jungle, when it pops on there, I mean, that's it. It's over from that point on when it comes to everything else that came after it.
Oh, I love that. So 87 for me, I was 16 going on 17. And I was in high school, and my music was really kind of starting to evolve. There's certain music I was listening to that I had to not tell people about. Like, I think I almost got my ass kicked for saying that I liked Abracadabra by the Steve Miller Band when I was talking about metal with other guys. Got to look. But I was into Styx too, Mr. Roboto. I was into that album. But I was doing a lot of skateboarding and a lot of BMXing, mostly skateboarding at this time. And what was very popular was skate punk. So I was getting into that. But then also speed metal. I was introduced to Metallica, Ride the Lightning. I was introduced to a lot of these metal bands because I was hanging out with a lot of these skaters that like these metal bands. And of course, the cool thing you had to do, you remember those peachy school folders with the little sports things going on it? You had, the cool thing to do is to put put Wasp logo on there, put the Van Halen logo, and Ride the Lightning was great. I remember writing this Metallica thing, this great Metallica logo on it, because, you had to show it off, with your friends. And I took time to write it. It was really cool. I took it to school. My buddy's like, dude, that's pretty cool. But Metallica's got 2 L's, bro. Yeah, I failed there. It was great. So I was starting to grow the hair. I was getting a little mullet starting to grow there too,
Nice.
And I was picking up some other bands too, which I'll mention a little bit later. But one of them that I picked up, and I think I still have the album or the cassette tape, and that was this band right here. Check it out. Hold on, get up here. Nasty Savage. How cool is that logo?
Wow, look at that, man.
I don't remember a darn song on this album. It's been so long, but I had to definitely play that a while. But these were great for when you were like, listen, on your bike or on your skateboard and all that kind of stuff. But then I started getting into a lot of the other stuff too, because the thrash metal, the speed metal, Metallica, then that started getting into other stuff as well. But that's what I was starting to get into. I didn't get into, so 87, I didn't get into Guns N' Roses right away. That came a little bit later, but I'm going to save that story for another time. Okay. I'll get into that a little bit later. So now, before we go on and get into the main topic here, I just want to mention, if you guys are listening to this or watching this, please head on over to Facebook. We have the Hair Metal Podcast fandom group there. We're also on Twitter as well at Hair Metal Cast. Join us there. But I thought that we would get into segment 2 here, Murf, and talk about some metal events that was happening in 1987. All right. So some events that affect us, the little metalheads. Udo Dirkenschneider appears to depart except citing management issues, and later that same year he forms UDO. Bon Jovi headlines the Monsters of Rock Festival with Dio, Metallica, Anthrax, Wasp, Cinderella, Dee Snider, Bruce Dickinson, Paul Stanley, all joined Bon Jovi to perform "We're an American Band" by Grand Funk. Motorhead's drummer Pete Gill leaves the band, and Filthy Animal Taylor returns. Motley Crue, Girls, Girls, Girls peaked at number 2 at the Billboard charts. And one of the best shows on television, Murph, Headbangers Ball, debuts on MTV April 18th, 1987. 87, baby.
Dang, old Ricky Rackman, man. That's must-see TV back then, man.
He wasn't on it first. They were like they were bringing in like bands. I think Lemmy came on for a while, and they were kind of going back and forth with guys trying to find that right guy, and eventually Ricky got it. Also at this time, of course, Bon Jovi's "Slippery When Wet" tops the Billboard charts for 8 weeks. In December 1987, Motley Crue bassist Nikki Sixx suffers a near-fatal heroin overdose. And make sure you read The Dirt. You can also watch The Dirt Netflix film as well, get a little insight on what happened there. And bassist Louis Mayorga leaves suicidal tendencies and was replaced by Bob Heathcote. At the same time, the band becomes a five-piece as they hire former No Mercy guitarist Mike Clark as their rhythm guitarist.
So I've got a real super quick anecdote on that.
Please.
So Luigi Mayorga is a buddy of ours who's on our show frequently. He's got a punk band called Los Gatos Locos, and
nice.
He's good buddies with Luigi, and he had Luigi on his podcast, and Luigi started a band called Lewicidal not long after that, and they're great. And so if you're into that kind of like that, again, that's the Southern California, that punk scene, that kind of like edgy skate stuff, like what you were talking about, not along with Suicidal, but Lewicidal is fantastic as well.
Luigi, I apologize for butchering your name. All right. So now in 1987, some bands were formed, Murf. We have Alice in Chains, Bad English, Biohazard. I'm doing this in alphabetical order. Blue Murder, John Sykes, baby. One of my favorite bands, Bullet Boys, also Danger, Dangerous Toys, seen all these guys. Danzig, death metal band Deicide, Disharmonica Orchestra, Electric Boys, love that band. Every Mother's Nightmare, Femme Fatale, Giant, Gorky Park, The Russian Band, Gun, Harem Scarum, Heaven's Edge, Hobbs, Angel of Death, House of Lords, Junkyard, love that band. Kingdom Come, Caius, Little Caesar, Nasty Idols, Nirvana,
ever heard of them?
Phantom Blue, this band, Pink Cream 69, glam band, Pretty Boy Floyd, Reanimator, Rollins Band, Roxas, Soraya, Seventh Angel, one of my favorite ones too that I found out way too late, Sleaze Bees, Taiketo, UDO, Ugly Kid Joe, and Winger. Well, that's a pretty interesting group of bands that made some names for themselves shortly after this, man. You can tell what was happening, what kind of what kind of metal was coming out.
Absolutely. I mean, I love the Alice in Chains reference in there and Nirvana, because as much of a hair metal guy as I am, I'm also a big grunge metal guy. That was such an amazing time in music, and to see those bands' name on there. But that said, like, so House of Lords did that cover of Can't Find My Way Home. That was an amazing song. If you remember that, that was a really good one. But my favorite, like my little dark horse on this list, Ugly Kid Joe, because I Hate Everything About You is one of the best freaking songs of the late 80s to come out. I still listen to that song every once in a while. That song is freaking hilarious. It's amazing.
For the record about Ugly Kid Joe, I used to see them at parties. You know why? Because they basically formed here, a little suburb here in Santa Barbara called Isla Vista. Maybe they might have done Santa Barbara, but they used to play. Isla Vista is the home of UCSB University. Great university, by the way. And it's IV is a little is basically a town for the students and infamous for parties. Okay. And a lot of bands back in the day in LA would come up, including Red Hot Chili Peppers, No Doubt, and Ugly Kid Joe. All these guys used to play there. And yeah, they were great. And I'm glad they were kind of like, we were happy for them. That hometown band hit it kind of big.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Yeah, anybody that's not familiar with that band or that song especially, just pull it up there on the YouTubes, man. It's great.
One thing that brings bands back together is probably money. There was 3 bands that disbanded, but did reform later. Alcatraz with 2 Z's, but they came back and reformed in 2006. A band called Sound Barrier reformed in 2017. And Twisted Sister, who released an album this year that we'll talk about, came back and reformed in 2003. So there you go. Now, before we get into the main show here, we're going to tease Murf, and I had a little job for you, and I hope you took your notes. Okay. We are going to be talking about the a lot of these top bands from that released albums in 1987. But I've asked Murf to give me, and I'm going to do the same thing, I want his top 5 rock metal albums from 1987 because they're all celebrating their 35th anniversary here in 2022. And I'm going to allow you to do a couple of start off with a couple of honorable mentions, and we'll get to that a little bit later. But let's get into the main meat of the show because we got some other people that have thoughts about this as well. So let's check this out. Hair Metal Podcast, episode 18, 1987 best rock metal albums. Are you feeling a little old, Murf? 35th anniversary?
A little bit. You know, I always like to say, you know, I'm not old yet, but I'm definitely older. You know what I mean? We're still in that season of life, Kevin, where, you know, we don't have to go to the doctor all the time yet. Our hips are still in good shape. Like, you know what I mean? Like, we're okay for right now.
Yeah, we're feeling it when we get out of bed or even just get up from a chair after a few minutes.
There's a lot of extra noises that are some are voluntary, some are involuntary.
Yes. You know, can't wear cool shoes anymore unless there's like 3 insoles in them now. It's crazy. Anyway. So I found an article from Loudwire called Best Hard Rock Albums of 87. And they go on to say the year of 87 was the key one in the history of hard rock music. Okay. And they said for much of the 80s, what would be considered hard rock mirrored what most of us would currently consider as classic rock. Holdovers from the 70s rock radio, as radio programmers held strong to the format, while there was an occasional breakthrough for harder sounding acts. The explosion of what declared as hair metal had started to grow roots a year prior with bands like Poison, Cinderella, Bon Jovi, of course, enjoying breakout success. And as the calendar year turned to 1987, there now was more of a home than ever to the mainstream rock airways for newer bands to make their mark. The year saw career revivals for a pair of 70s rock radio staples, the continued evolution of previous breakouts like Def Leppard and Motley Crue, and wealth of critically praised hard rock bands finally found their shot at commercial stardom. Head to the gallery, and we're going to go to what they picked as their top 10 rock albums of 1987. And Murf, I wanted to ask you, I listened to was Ricky Rackman had a podcast for a while, and I think he's come back to. It's called the Cat House podcast because he ran a very popular club in Hollywood called the Cat House. Yeah. He had Guns N' Roses there. My favorite band, Bang Tango, played there. It was like it was kind of like the Viper Room cool before the Viper Room, that type of thing, you know. And there were certain bands that he loved playing there. But he was honest and said there were certain bands I didn't want playing there. He was not a fan of this pop metal. He wasn't a fan of Poison and all this kind of stuff. And to this date, he does not like the term hair metal. I, however, do, because when you say hair metal, it refers to a certain time. I kind of feel like we're taking the term back because for a while, Murph, I think that hair metal was used to kind of either make fun of glam bands that maybe were too poppy to be metal. Your thoughts on the term hair metal?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that it's got like multiple connotations to it. And once upon a time, that was like, you know, if anybody wanted to take a shot at Winger or Warrant or, you know, whatever.
Thank you, Beavis and Butthead.
Exactly. That you could refer to it as hair metal. Remember, for a minute, it was called, people were calling it glam rock, but glam rock, that's not glam rock to me. Glam rock to me is like T-Rex and like, you know, that kind of stuff. So I think it definitely took on a negative connotation, but yeah, it's fine now. I think what you said is exactly what nails it for me, is that it refers to an era, just like the term grunge. A lot of people take that as a negative, but it refers to a very specific era of rock and roll. There was the psychedelic era, right? There was a lot of different eras in rock, and so just to refer to that time in the 80s, I don't think there's anything necessarily wrong with that at least at this point.
Agreed. To me, you know, this is when metal was taking over. 80s was the metal decade. And of course, 80s were great for pop music as well, and a bunch of other ones. But when it came to the rock star, I think that this was the last really thing before they kind of like, you know, took it too much excess, and then people were kind of getting tired of it. But this time right now was a fun time to go to concerts. It was a fun time to be famous. It was a fun time to be a rock star. And thus is why I'm proud to say that we still call it hair metal. Loudwire has their top 10 albums here. I'm going to start with number 10 here. Great White's Once Bitten. Hard rock metal came to the forefront. Great White released their third studio album as Just the Right Time, a slow burn opening of Rock Me, leading into a soulful, swagger-filled vocal for Jack Russell. And, of course, we had Save Your Love, tracks like Lady Red Light and All Over Now. Great album. And then they go on to Faith No More. Came in at number 9. This is Loudwire's pick. White Lion's Pride, The Cult, Electric, Motley Crue, Girls, Jethro Tull.
How does Motley fall behind freaking Jethro Tull in this? I don't get it. Jethro Tull,
don't get it.
It's prog rock at best. If anything, it's classic rock. It's that 70s era stuff. The fact that Jethro shows up on any of these lists drives me nuts.
Yeah, agreed. Completely agree. Aerosmith, Permanent Vacation, proving that the arena band from the 70s, the Toxic Twins, all the drugs they went through, they came back, cleaned themselves up to lead the charge for the younger guys, because you had Guns N' Roses opening up for them. I mean, they went straight to arenas, and Permanent Vacation was a great album. Number 3, White Snake's debut album with David Coverdale. Some great songs on there. We'll get into that a little bit later. Number 2, Def Leppard's Hysteria. And their number 1 was Guns N' Roses' Appetite for Destruction. Now, besides Jethro Tull here, the one that really kind of surprised me was Faith No More, Introduce Yourself. Yeah. Thoughts on this guy's list here?
It's fine. I mean, I typically lean outside of what would be considered the classic hair metal tastes. I kind of lean outside of that a little bit. I lean a little bit more into the heavier side of things, or the eclectic side of things, which is why I like Faith No More. I just don't see them on this list. And there's a lot of other albums I would have plugged in there. If we're talking like really like the best, and we'll get into this more in a second, but like that really wasn't a great hard rock album for that. It was a fine album because it's Faith No More, but it's not until you get to Epic that they really become Faith No More. So
right.
You know what I mean? So like, I don't know if I'd have put that on there. I mean, Great White makes a lot of sense. White Lion makes a lot of sense. Like the other bands that are listed on here. The one that I will tell you I'm pleasantly surprised by is that the Cult, because the Cult are a lot of times thought of as like an alternative band. Right. You know what I mean? Like they were, like, I remember back in the day, I grew up in San Jose, California, and our rock stations on KSJO and KOME, you would never hear the Cult. You'd have to tune in to the station that was playing. I don't remember the name of it anymore, but the station that played like The Cure and Depeche Mode. And like, that was the station that would play the Cult for whatever reason. But when you listen to the Cult, they're a rock and roll band, man.
Oh yeah.
Like, yeah. I mean, you know what I mean? everything that we love about rock and roll, big guitars, big drums.
Yeah. Billy Duffy, the guitar player, made my top 5 list of underrated guitar players. An earlier episode here on the Hair Metal Podcast to do with my friend Johnny K. Absolutely love him. But good point there about the Cult. Yeah, definitely. So I think it's time to get into let's do it. But first, what we're gonna do, I'm gonna name a bunch of I'm gonna show some album covers of some other bands, and we're gonna show some for art purposes as well, and then we're gonna get into our list here. But before we do that, though, I'm gonna tease you here. We're gonna pick our top 5. And but first, we're going to take a little break from our hair metal discussion and let you know what other great podcasts are here on the Fandom Podcast Network. Thank you for listening. We hope you're enjoying this podcast. We'd like to continue to feed your ears by inviting you to listen to these other great shows on the Fandom Podcast Network. It starts with our flagship show, Culture Clash, discussing the latest in entertainment pop culture. Bloody Kings, Immortals Take Notice, our show covering the entire Highlander universe. Couch Potato Theaters, where we celebrate our favorite movies. Time Warp, the Fandom Flashback podcast discussing a year in movies and our favorite retro movie and TV pop culture topics. Good Evening, discussing all things Alfred Hitchcock. Union Federation, our Star Trek and Orville show. Hair Metal, the 80s and early 90s rock metal podcast. Type 40, our show covering the time-traveling Doctor Who universe with host Dan Hadley. Lethal Mullet, an 80s and 90s action film podcast with host Adam P. O'Brien. Also, check out the Lethal Mullet Network for more great podcasts. What a Piece of Junk, a Star Wars podcast with hosts Scott, Derek, and Nathan. Making Treks, a Star Trek podcast, a deep dive into the final frontier with hosts Mark Newbold and Adam P. O'Brien. And check out our newest shows, The Fandom Show, our monthly Fandom Podcast Network live YouTube exclusive show about the month's hottest topics in fandom, and the FPN True Believers MCU podcast, discussing the Marvel Cinematic Universe and the related Marvel television and streaming MCU universe, including the connections to the original Marvel comics. You can find the Fandom Podcast Network on several platforms. Please subscribe to the Fandom Podcast Network YouTube channel to receive notifications of new podcast episodes and live events. You can enjoy all of the Fandom Podcast Network audio podcasts on our master feed at fpnet.podbean.com. The Fandom Podcast Network is on all major podcast platforms, including Apple Podcast and iTunes. You can find the Fandom Podcast Network on Facebook. You can email us at fandompodcastnetwork@gmail.com. You can also find the Fandom Podcast Network on Instagram at Fandom Podcast Network and on Twitter at FanPod Network. Thank you for listening, and remember, respect others and enjoy your fandom. All right, welcome back to the Hair Metal Podcast. This is episode 18, and we are back, 2022, and we are discussing 1987 best rock albums because they're all 35 years old, and we are not. I'd like to welcome back my my wonderful guest here, Mr. Murf from Raiders Fan Radio, dude. Let's get into the meat of the show here, man. I wanted to know what our top 5 1987 rock metal albums are, and I also have one final question. So the listeners and you guys that are viewing is also, what album had the best? What band in '87 that released the album had the best album cover? Might not be our favorite album, but we'll see. We'll see and check about that. Okay. But I did want to mention, and I'm going to go ahead and show some albums here that I did tease a little bit earlier. Talk about, of course. Let's do this here. Let's add Motorhead here. Oh, nice. They released that. Check that out. Pretty cool. All right. And I mentioned Nasty Savage. Okay. They released one. And we also got Metal Massacre. Do you remember Metal Massacre?
I do not. No, that's new to me.
Okay, this was one of those albums that if you were into the speed metal genre, you had to pick up this album because they brought bands to other people that were trying to make it, and they decided to put out more than one as well. And I want to say they Rat was on there for some weird reason, but they had a bunch of speed metal bands, and Metallica had a song on there as well. It was great.
Oh,
and
really?
It was kind of like, hey, you want to be a speed metal fan? You got to get Metal Massacre. So
okay,
yeah, definitely very, very cool. Also, what else we got here, man? We got Joe Satriani, Surfing with the Alien. Great album cover, right? We also got Autograph. They had an album come out, and then we also had Man of War. Let's give it up to Man of War for saying, you know what? We don't care what we look like. We're going to put on bondage uniform like we got a gimp down in the basement, and we're going to speed metal you to death, man. Or maybe we look like extras from Conan. I don't know.
Well, I was going to say, if you don't look at that album cover and think I have the power, then I don't know what they were trying to go for.
We also got Sabotage, one of my favorite speed metal bands as well. One of my favorite songs from the Sirens. Great metal band there. Venom, another great band. Do you remember Venom?
Ooh, yeah, I remember the band. I don't remember the their music or anything. I
yeah. Anthrax, Among the Living, dude. Let's give it up for Anthrax. Yes. And thank you, Anthrax, for not caving to the Anthrax terrorism threat and changing your name. Thank you for keeping it.
Big time.
Yep. Exactly. Ozzy Osbourne releases Randy Rhoads tribute album, live album. Just a heads up too. On the podcast here, on the network here, I did want to mention we do other podcasts here, and one of my favorite podcasts that I actually produce and put together and do all the research for is called Time Warp. And what we do is we go back and look an entire year of movies, and we do about 6 episodes. We do a couple months at a part. We talk about each of these movies when they're released. But not only do we talk about the movies, we touch a little bit on the pop culture and the music that came out. And so we kind of take you back in time and let you know what was popular while those movies were happening. And I love doing it because I'm a big movie nerd, and I learn about movies that I don't even remember or barely see. And we challenge ourselves to watch movies, because we do talk about movies we haven't seen, and we say, okay, out of all these movies we haven't seen, which one do you now want to go see? But we're doing 1982, Murph. And unfortunately, in 1982 is when Randy Rhoads died in that awful plane accident. And this was a wonderful album that Ozzy did. Great album, too. You remember this one?
Yeah, we're going to talk about it.
All right. We'll get to it. All right.
I can tell you what I think about it now, but I've got a feeling you're going to, I don't want to run out of stuff to talk about later.
Okay. No. Glad you said that. I want to mention this band, Tiger Tails here. They're from the UK. They're basically, they were kind of like
Josie and the Pussycats. I love them.
Yeah. I'm sorry. These girls are hot. By the way, I'm just going to say it. They're UK's Poison, basically, but they're glam pop metal. They got a great song called Love Bomb Baby. My friend Carl Nordstrom is a big fan of them. Check them out if you're into glam and pop metal. These guys are the epitome of it. We also got YNT released their album. Yep, YNT. And we also got Dokken back for the attack. Got those guys. And Twisted Sister, Love is for Suckers. And apparently
that's a great album cover, man.
Great album cover. If you're listening to this podcast, make sure you check out the YouTube version of this, because we're putting all these album covers up there. Unfortunately, Love is for Suckers, and we're going to break up this year.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
But they came back. They reformed. We also got Wasp live in the Raw. Nice. Oh man, dude, I saw Wasp once. Luckily, I was not in the front row for that, because I was not in meat throwing distance. Unfortunately, I was almost in bass guitar pick throwing distance, but they were really loud. They scared the crap out of me, but I loved them. Blackie Lawless, Chris Holmes. Oh my God, is that guy
big Raider fan? Blackie Lawless.
Yes, thank you for mentioning that. Yes, definitely. What else we got here, Murph? We've got Priest live.
Nice.
Priest live, man. God, great band. We also have TNT, Tell No Tales. Buddy Carl's a big fan. We've got Dio, Dream Evil.
Oh, nice.
Dio had great freaking album covers, man.
Yeah, he did.
It's like Absolutely. This one here. Love it. Aerosmith, as we mentioned, Permanent Vacation. Just showing some of these here. Faster Pussycats debut album, dude. Faster Pussycat. And this is when the Cat House was starting to happen. Tame Me Down, lead singer, was Ricky Rackman's friend and also roommate.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, and they actually opened up the Cat House together. And so, yeah, that's why that place was like a band place. That's where bands could go and, hang out in a certain area and stuff like that. So, yeah. Got Kiss, Makeup's Off. Yeah, there we go.
Yeah.
Crazy Nights, Makeup's Off.
Wow, yeah.
Hold on, I want to go back to Kiss real quick. I got to be on. Hold on, messed up here. There we go. I got to be honest with you, Murph. I knew who Kiss was. I had friends that were part of Kiss Army. I've heard them. I liked them. But when they took their music or took their makeup off and started doing this kind of more poppy stuff, that's when I became a fan. Then I went back and really loved their old stuff. And the first time I saw them was in the 90s when they finally came back with all original members with their makeup. So what'd you think? What did you think of no makeup Kiss?
You know what? I was indifferent because I was never a Kiss guy. To me, and this is no disrespect to anybody that is, but it just never clicked with me. I never thought they were great musicians. I never thought they were great. Vocally or lyrically or anything. But I remember even as a kid, one of the first albums I ever bought was Love Gun, and it came out with this like pop out Love Gun and this whole thing. And so, I mean, because it looked cool and you know what I mean? And they look cool, but past being action figures, their music never settled on me.
I'm not going to apologize for this statement. I'm going to stand by it, but my favorite Kiss song is Heaven's on Fire.
Oh, really? Oh, there you go.
Yep.
There you go.
Loudness. Remember Loudness? Japanese metal band that came out?
Absolutely. Yeah.
They played here in Santa Barbara way back in the day. Loved Loudness. And then, of course, we've got Metallica's EP, and it's nicknamed it's Garage Days Revisited, but it's also known as the 598 EP because they didn't want you to pay more.
Yeah. Wait, this was in 87?
Yeah, this came out in 87. This was like Hello Newstead, you know? Yeah.
I'm going to change my list.
Yeah.
I didn't realize this one came out in 87.
Yeah, 87, man. And then, of course, we've got White Lion Pride. Great album, that one. Of course, we mentioned Great White, White Snake, Motley Crue, Girls, 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 Def Leppard, Hysteria, The Cult, Electric. There's Guns N' Roses, Appetite for Destruction, of course. Now, I did want to mention, Murph, we had some friends of our Hair Metal podcast comment on these. I asked them to put their list together here. I just want to mention this real quick. My buddy David M. Walsh said, anything that doesn't include Appetite for Destruction is just wrong, unfortunately.
I agree with that. Yeah.
We'll discuss that. My buddy Alex Autry said, I saw Great White open for Whitesnake. I saw Queensryche open for Def Leppard. Lived on those two Anthrax albums. Sadly, the longest staying power was Appetite, and it has been overplayed so much, I just can't stand it. I know people that are tired of that album. We'll discuss that. My good friend Derek Marsh, big Cult fan. His honorable mentions, just because they're not, it's not hair metal, but he does mention Joshua Tree, U2. Number 5 is Guns N' Roses for him, Appetite for Destruction. 4, Aerosmith, Permanent Vacation. 3, Motorhead, Rock and Roll. 2, The Cult, Electric, and 1, Def Leppard. My buddy Greg Kirkmeyer, I love him. He's a big speed metal guy. He put in no particular order, GNR Appetite, Metallica, the 598 EP, Anthrax, Among the Living, Sabotage, Hail of the Mountain King, and King Diamond, Abigail. Well said. My buddy Carl Nordstrom said Def Leppard, GNR, TNT, Tell No Tale, Great White, Once Bitten, Tiger Tails, Young and Crazy. This was a great year. I really embraced some obscure borderline metal in my younger days. I was the only Tiger Tails fan that I knew about. Unfortunately, yes, you were. I didn't get on to Tiger Tails till about 20 years later when I finally figured out who they were. So, and my good friend Vince Stefanelli of our Hair Metal podcast. Vince, if you're listening, I'm going to get you on the podcast because I need to pick your brain. He said no particular order. 5 would be The Cult, Electric, Dock and Back for the Attack, GNR Appetite, Crew, Girls, 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 and White Lion Pride. Now, I'm going to go over some other bands that listed the albums that they released that we haven't talked about. Alice Cooper, Raise Your Fist and Yell. Anvil, Strength of Steel. Armored Saint, Raising Fear. Billy Idol, Vital Idol. Bitch, The Bitch is Back. Black Sabbath, Eternal Idol. Bonfire, Fireworks. Carnivore, Retaliation. Celtic Frost, Into the Pandemonium. DRI, crossover. Dirty Looks, I Want More. Death, Scream Bloody Gore. Death Angel, I remember these guys. The Ultraviolence. Paul Diano's Battle Zone, Children of Madness. Excel, Split Image. Exodus, Pleasures of the Flesh. Love me some Exodus. Faith No More, of course, we said. Fraley's Comet, his debut album came out. There we go. Kiss's former guitar player. Freely. What else we got? Grim Reaper. Helix. Hellion. Halloween. Icon. Kane Roberts. Keel. King Diamond. Creator with a K. Leatherwolf. Lion. Lizzie Borden. Mama's Boy, Mammoth, Manowar, if we mentioned. Macaulay Schenker Group, Perfect Timing. I mentioned Metal Massacre. This was Metal Massacre 3, by the way. Vinnie Moore, Mind's Eye. Napalm Death, Scum. Nasty Savage, Overkill, Pretty Maids, Primal Scream, Protector, Racer X, Rage, Railway, Rankelson, Raven, Rollins Band, Rush, of course, we mentioned. Savage Steel, Sabotage, Sepultura. Slaughter came in there, not with Mark Slaughter that I remember anyway. Can't remember. Maybe so. Can't remember. Stiletto, Suicidal Tendencies, Testament, Triumph, Trouble, Tough Luck, Tigers of Pantang, Venom, Victory, Viper, Void. What else we got here? Wild Dogs, Wrath. So there's some of those names there. Murph, any of those that jump out at you?
Yeah. I mean, the names jump out at me, but the music doesn't. You know what I mean? I think I stayed more in the, I don't know what to call it, the mainstream path, I guess. Because again, I was only 13 years old, so like
you weren't allowed to listen to some of those because they had that little warning on them, maybe.
No, it was actually, my parents are pretty cool about that kind of stuff. But like, you know, you go to like back in the day, we go to Tower Records and you're thumbing, and I guess just like Wrath never like jumped out at me. You know what I mean? Like I was looking for the stuff that I get to hear on that we were listening to on the radio, you know. So
you know what? I still have that Nasty Savage cassette tape. I gotta see what songs are on that. But Murf, let's get into the good stuff here. All right, Murf. This is the good stuff here.
Here we go.
I had to
go on the fly and amend some things. This is
okay. That's fine. I'm actually going to take a moment while you're talking, and I'm actually going to put these in the list because I asked Murf. I don't want to know your list. Murf can see my list, but I don't want to know his. So I'm curious to see what it is. But we're going to do some honorable mentions first before we get to our top 5. And Murf, you're our guest. What is your first honorable mention?
So can I, since I had to make an amends, can we call an audible late, and I'll make it quick, but can I give you 3
Sure.
honorable mentions? Okay. So my first one was Heart, Bad Animals.
Nice.
Because, and the reason I have them as an honorable mention and not in the top 5 is that Heart is an amazing band, and the Wilson sisters are just unmatched when it comes to vocal and musical talent.
Yeah.
I mean, just incredible, underrated by far. Especially when you consider, you know, the vocal talents of Ann Wilson. But I didn't include them in the top because it got real poppy, and it was almost like it went beyond even like hard rock and heavy metal. And I mean,
Alone was a huge hit,
massive. And you know, and they were so beautiful, and their voices and everything. So like, there's no like mystery on why they became that. And why MTV celebrated them the way that they did and all that, but I didn't feel like it really like hit in hair metal. It felt just more like maybe just like a harder version of pop music. So that's an honorable mention. Here's one that I'll bet you that hasn't shown up on any of these lists yet, and so I'm hoping that I can tweak a little some folks' minds that are listening to this. I put the Uplift Moho part. God, if I can talk. The Uplift Mofo Party Plan, Red Hot Chili Peppers, on my honorable mentions.
Red Hot Chili Peppers.
Because when you listen, this was like the last album. Like this was right before Mother's Milk, and then of course Blood Sugar Sex Magic, where they launched into the stratosphere. But this is
what was the name of the album again? I forgot.
The Uplift Mofo Party Plan.
That's right.
Yeah, and so this is a band that, like Faith No More, was never really like or even the Cult at time, like not classified as a hard rock band, but there's plenty. If you listen to a song like, you know, Me and My Friends on this album, it's a metal song. When you listen to Fight Like a Brave, and like it's heavy. It's like, you know, all the things that are characteristic of a good rock and roll band. Yes, it's fused with reggae, and yes, there's a lot of. And the Chili Peppers, you could say, are one of those bands where they kind of defy genre. Like you could put them in multiple things.
Yeah.
But they were a rockin' freaking band. And that was kind
of the best live bands ever.
Oh, amazing live band. Yes. Yeah. And this was kind of one of those albums that started putting them on the map. And so I think that Mofo Party Plan definitely belongs.
Good honorable mentions. You got another honorable mention?
I do. Just one more quick one. And I had to take it off my list of top 5, and that's Tribute. That's Ozzy Osbourne and Tribute. And I think it was so well placed in 1982 because, as you mentioned, you know, Randy Rhoads dies in 1982. And if they'd have come out with this album on the heels of his passing, it would have been tacky as all hell. And so the idea that they waited 5 years to release it, it was an all live album. And not only did you get to hear the amazing talents of Randy Rhoads live playing those Ozzy Osbourne songs that we're familiar with off Blizzard of Oz and whatnot, but that also he's playing, you know, Black Sabbath songs. You hear him play Paranoid. And listen, this is no disrespect to Tony Iommi, and it's only, you know, on occasion that the Padawan will eclipse the master. Randy Rhoads sounds better than Tony Iommi does live on those cuts on Tribute. Yeah. Like Tribute is a phenomenal album. To me, it's the best album cover of all of 1987. That amazing shot of Ozzy holding him up into the air, and you can YouTube that performance, and you can see that live where he picks him up and everything. It was amazing. And Randy Rhoads, I won't get on a huge rant here, but Randy Rhoads would have changed the landscape of rock and roll should he have stayed alive. He was only around for those 2 Ozzy albums. Of course, he did the Quiet Riot albums prior to that before they took off. But those first Quiet Riot albums came out in 1978. And, when you look at when Van Halen started, and look, Eddie Van Halen is inarguably the greatest rock and roll guitar player of that generation, if not maybe the greatest rock and roll guitar player of all time. And when he was asked about Randy Rhoads, and I get it, and Eddie had an ego, and Eddie felt that he was the best, and he wasn't necessarily wrong. But when asked about Randy Rhoads, he says, "Well, I know he's really great, but I don't see him doing anything maybe that I haven't done." And that was, to me, that was a little bit of a shot at Randy Rhoads. And I think he took a shot at Randy Rhoads because he was threatened by Randy Rhoads, because Randy Rhoads started playing with Quiet Riot the exact same time that Van Halen started playing with Van Halen. And these guys were kind of escalating and coming up together. And those 2 albums with Ozzy put Randy Rhoads on the map. When you listen to him live, he sounds similar to Eddie Van Halen. Not that they're not copying each other. They're both individually great in what they were doing. And sadly, Randy was taken from us so soon, and he never got a chance to cement his legacy as one of the all-time greats. But when you go back and listen to that album, listen to Tribute, and really listen and hone in on that man's, not only his solo playing, but his rhythm guitar, and just everything that's coming out of that amp is just genius. And so Tribute to me is one of the greatest albums of this. Not only
real quick, I forget where I saw it on YouTube, but there was a guy that analyzed the riff for Crazy Train, which is probably what a lot of people most know him for. And I remember hearing that song for the first time, and and he came on to talk about, and he was a really good guitar player. Forgive me, but I can't remember his name, but I'm sure if you search for it, he was able to figure out, or at least educate the viewers of why people don't get his sound or his solo or his play on that song just right. And how he went into it about how he laid more than one track, and he was able to get this thing, and how when he did that, he actually played each track slightly different. And he goes into this big whole thing, and he does it. And this guy was amazing. And like I said, just do a search on YouTube for it about this guy analyzing that song. And he was going on about how a genius that he was. And he was saying the same things you were, Murf, about how he didn't get the chance to really, set his legendary status. If he only would have gotten, at least 10 more years, it would have been amazing to see what happened.
I mean, he wrote Goodbye to Romance with Ozzy, and he wrote so many songs too. Like, we never got to see him take off as a songwriter. I mean, when you look at what this guy did just coming out of the gate, I mean, it's just, probably, again, it's arguable, but might be one of the, if not the greatest loss we've ever had in rock and roll, because even with the so many we've had taken so young, from Janis and Jimmy and Jim and Kurt Cobain, and all those that were taken so young from us, they still had a large catalog of work.
Yeah,
Randy Rhoads had 2 albums, barely. Only 2 with Ozzy, and then the stuff with Quiet Riot, he was really kind of still finding himself, right? So the idea that we really only have 2 albums of this man's work, and for him to leave the legacy that he did from just those 2 albums, again, before he even got into his songwriting talents, is just fascinating. It's really sad. But so to bring it all back, Tribute, I think, is amazing. And frankly, for me, because again, I wasn't into I was never really into Sabbath much, was never really into that stuff growing up. Tribute, though, when I heard that and then connected with these songs and realized what the album was about, then it was like, oh wow, now I need to go back and listen to all this stuff that Ozzy did prior and get caught up with, with everything from Black Sabbath up and again, Blizzard of Oz and Diary of a Madman. Dude, it's incredible stuff.
Nice. Did you have any other honorable mentions?
No, just those 3.
Okay. Okay, cool. I've got 2 honorable mentions. And the first one I want to mention is Great White. Love this album, man. Love this album. Once Bitten. Great album cover, too. Hot chick on the cover. Shark fin in the back. We get you. We got it. Yeah, But Rock Me, man. One of my favorite songs from this album. Just a great song. And then, of course, they would go on to release their other great song, Once Bitten, Twice Shy, the cover. Great cover as well. Great rock babes in that video as well. So yeah. That one, I love that album because they had this kind of bluesy feel to it as well. And really, really good musicians as well. Really good musicians. Big fan of that. My other, let's see if I got here. My other one. We're going to go to this one right here. These guys are pretty good. Whitesnake. Yeah.
Oh, I'm surprised that didn't make your top. Neither one of us are in our top 5.
This one was close, dude. Really, really close. I freaking love this band. And, the track on this one was Crying in the Rain, 87, Bad Boy, Still the Night. Here I Go Again, the 87 version. Give Me All Your Love, Is This Love, Children of the Night, Straight for the Heart, Don't Turn Away. All tracks are written by David Coverdale and John Sykes, who made it onto my friend John's underrated guitar player list. Because I don't know if you remember, but John Sykes left and went to do his own band a little bit later on, which was like Blue Murder, I think it was, if I remember correctly. And he sang and wrote and played guitar on that. It's just great. But Whitesnake is just fantastic. Definitely an honorable mention there. So it was close, Murf. It was almost there, made the top 5. So, all right, let's go ahead and get into our top 5, Murf. And I want your number 5. What is your number 5?
Number 5 is Joe Satriani's Surfing with the Alien. I love this record. And I was so glad to see you had the cover of that up earlier with the Silver Surfer on there.
You mean this one right here? There you go.
Right there. Now, because you had the Silver Surfer, and they licensed that from Marvel, so he could use that, the actual Silver Surfer. And then later on, when Marvel became really Marvel, they went to re-up to be able to use this image and wanted Marvel money, and Joe Satriani said no thanks, and so you got this reissue that's just got like the neck of a guitar on there. But in terms of this album itself, though, this was the first instrumental album that I ever listened to all the way through. Of course, the lead track, the title track, Surfing with the Alien, is phenomenal. But when you listen to this thing start to finish, it listens like an album. It's cool to pick out songs, and then nowadays we're so accustomed to just listening to singles, and I'm guilty of it too. When I listen to my Pandora, it's just playing. I don't listen to albums as much. But back in the day, when we would buy our records or we would buy our tapes or whatever, and you would listen to the thing all the way through. This thing very much, it's almost a concept album. It takes you all the way through so many different vibes, from Satch Boogie to Echoes to it's just such a cool, I don't know. Again, it's a vibe, the whole thing. And the Always With Me, Always With You is one of my favorite songs on there. But there's what was the one? I guess that was one I was trying to think of. Always With Me, Always With You. That's kind of like the chilled down. Kind of it's right in the middle of the album, kind of brings you down, you kind of vibe with that. And then it goes into Satch Boogie, which might be the most rockinest one on the record. But anyways, it's just a fun record to listen to, especially being that it's instrumental. I don't know about you, but when I'm working, I have a tough time listening to music that's got vocals in it because I'm typing emails or whatever, or I'm listening to somebody. So
you want instrumentals, yeah?
One instrumental. This is a great album to throw on and have in the background. And again, it's light. It's just Joe Satriani cut this with 4 different guitars. A couple session guys. Satriani is. I'm not telling anybody anything new. The guy's a genius. But it's just awesome, man. I love this album. And this is one, again, first one I bought. And this is one of them ones that I had on an old little Murf's Walkman in 1987, man. I had this thing running for, months at a time. It was fantastic.
I saw him play here at the Arlington Theater here in Santa Barbara. And this was when Eric Johnson's album came out. Remember Eric Johnson's Cliffs of Dover?
Well, because it became kind of a thing. It was Eric Johnson, Joe Satriani, and freaking Steve Vai. We were all and
the 80s seemed to bring out the guitar virtuosos in their solo albums, or not just solo, that it was them. The act was them. You had Yngwie Malmsteen come into the 80s, and then all these other guys started coming out. But what was interesting was I was actually a huge Eric Johnson fan, and I like Satriani, but I actually went more there to see Eric Johnson, and he killed it. And he just, I don't know if he won over or got the respect from the Satriani fans. He got a standing ovation. And he walked off the stage, and people wanted him to come back out and play some more. But of course, he was the opening band. He didn't do that. But Satriani came out and gave him, said, "Let's hear it up for Johnson." And everyone went nuts. And then Satriani just put on a great show. But great choice there, Murf. Great choice. Yeah. Okay, so my number 5, you may know these guys. I'm going to go ahead and find here, but they're known for some leather. You may know them for some, I don't know, some chains, some fire, stuff like that. They kind of know a lot of girls. Motley Crue at number 5 for me, man. Love Motley Crue. And dude, starts off with Wild Side. And how can you forget that video with Tommy and his kit, and it's turning, and then it goes out to the crowd? Tommy knew how to take drumming to another level. You got to give him credit for that. Of course, we had Girls, Dancing on Glass, Bad Boy Boogie, Nona, 5 Years Dead, all in the name of Something for Nothing, and You're All I Need, and they did a cover of Jailhouse Rock as well. Just a great album. Real quick, Murf, are we going to be talking about this band again?
Yeah. Do you want my take on them now, or you want me to wait?
I'm going to have you wait, because I want you to shine. So,
okay.
Yeah. All right. So what is number 2? Number 4 for you?
So, okay. So this is where I had to kind of call an audible last minute. And if the competition weren't so steep, this might be number 1, but I didn't. So the reason I put it later on is because I didn't discover this album until later. So I didn't discover or really get into Metallica until I heard Garage Days, the 598 EP, but I didn't hear it until like 1991. And because everybody was into the Black Album. And I remember when the Black Album came out, there was such a big deal and everything was Enter Sandman. And I'm like, I'm not really into this Black Album thing, but I remember hearing some stuff from Ride the Lightning, and I remember some of the stuff that came before it. I'm like, well, let me just listen to some of their early stuff. And I thought this was one of their earliest records because it was a cover, right? And and it was the reissued thing, the way that it was labeled. So it actually marketing wise fooled me. And I thought, oh, this was something from way back in the day. So I got this. I didn't even realize it was an album of cover songs. I didn't know who the Misfits were. I wasn't into Killing Joke or Diamond Head or any of that kind of stuff. But anyways, but when you drop the needle and Helpless is on there, and it just freaking knocks the crap out of you. I mean, what an amazing album and EP for only having 5 songs. And then, Small Hours is good. The Weight is good. Crash Course in Brain Surgery is a blast. But then you get to Last Caress and Green Hill. That might be some of the best Metallica ever recorded. It's so freaking good.
Yeah.
Just at the beginning, I got something to say. I mean, then the rest of it, it's so freaking awesome. So
it is good. It has a running time of 25 minutes. And as you mentioned, Helpless, and that's a Diamond Head song. The Small Hours, Holocaust song. The Weight by Killing Joke. Crash Course in Brain Surgery is by Budgie, and of course Last Caress Green Hill is by the Misfits. And Jason Newsted was on this. And that
was that his first time playing with them? I guess that's how that went.
Well, I guess so. It says here that, let me double check real quick. It is the group's first release following the death of bassist Cliff Burton, and the first to feature his successor, Jason Newsted. And Metallica was scheduled to play the 87 Monsters of Rock Festival at Castle Donington. The band's UK label, Vertigo Records, suggested they release new material to mark the occasion. Thus, they decided to do this, and they soundproofed Lars' garage in El Cerrito, California, so the band would rehearse and do some recording there.
This thing for somebody that wasn't, again, I was loosely familiar with, I knew Fade to Black, and of course everybody knows Master of Puppets, and I knew some of those songs, but I really didn't know the catalog of Metallica. And this album, or EP opened up my, interest in the band, and then going back. And now I'm one of the biggest Metallica junkies in the planet, including even ordering their live performance at Allegiant Stadium when they played with the
Dude,
Raiders.
that is so cool. I started seeing bands do that at clubs back in the Eric, hold on. Let me get your picture here on this one, because this is very cool.
See if I can get this to come in here.
Yeah, that you can actually get the album that you saw play live there. That is really cool.
Yeah.
May I ask how long that thing is? Oh man, look at those. Okay.
So it's I don't know, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. It's 16 tracks. So Whiplash, Ride the Lightning, Memory Remains, Seek and Destroy, Fuel 1, Sad But True, Moth to Flame, Wherever I May Roam, For Whom the Bell Tolls, Creeping Death, Fade to Black, Master of Puppets, Battery, Nothing Else Matters, and then of course Enter Sandman. And so this was just in February when they played Allegiant Stadium. And so you can go on the Metallica website and you can order whatever their shows are, whatever live shows.
That is fantastic. What a way to make some extra money, but also an extra memento if you happen to go that show, or if you wanted to go that show.
Exactly.
You got that as a gift, didn't you?
Yeah, so I got this, and so the other shirt that I didn't wear tonight, I wanted to, is the Metallica shirt with the Raiders shield in chains and the Metallica football helmet on there, and then it says 2/25, 22, whatever the concert date was.
Very cool, man.
Yeah, it was a one-time show. But anyways, I'm a Metallica junkie at this point in my life, and have been now for a good while, but wasn't until 1991 when I heard this album released back in '87 called Garage Days EP. Man, it's
real
phenomenal.
quick.
Yeah.
Favorite Metallica song of all time? Which one?
Oh, geez, Kev.
Pick it.
Fade to Black. I mean,
yeah, good one. Mine's For Whom the Bells Toll. That's it right there.
That's a great one too. I mean, but the best intro, like the Creeping Death, it's hard. Like when we first started our Raiders show, we did use Creeping Death as the intro to our show before I got kicked off iTunes. Before I was back then, I didn't realize you couldn't use copyrighted music. But man,
that's great.
Yeah, that's like asking to pick between your kids, though. You know what
I
mean?
I know, man. Yeah. It's tough. Gosh. Okay, where was I? Oh, number 4 for me. Right, so yours is Metallica, the 598 EP, Garage Days Revisited. I love it how it was just like the 598 EP. That's how much you should pay for. No more, no less. I love it. It's great. It's great. My number 4, man, dude, this album was huge for strippers. Def Leppard, Hysteria, Pour Some Sugar on Me, man. Oh my God, this album is just so freaking good. I mean, Hysteria. So Def Leppard's huge, Murf, already. And apparently their biggest song, well known for, is Pour Some Sugar on Me. It was the last song they recorded. It wasn't even going to make the album. Some great history on that. But I think this album, I don't know how many number 1 hits they had, but they had these releases. They had Women, Rocket, Animal, Pour Some Sugar on Me, Love Bites, Armageddon It, and Hysteria were all released as singles. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 songs from this tune, man. It is just insane. It took me a while to see them. I didn't get a chance to see them with this tour. Unfortunately, I missed it. But man, I love when you go back and like watch the old VH1 behind the scenes music ones, and how they I think it was the Pyromania tour. They owed money to the recording contracts and all the production in the tour, but that made so much money. They came back millionaires, and then when they did this tour, they came back like mega multimillionaires. It is just an amazing album. You're wondering, Kevin, why is it in 4? I mean, well, because the other songs on my list mean a little more to me, but this was a great album. And Murf, did you want to talk about it now, or do you want to wait?
No, I can talk about this one now.
Okay, so it's not okay. All right, go ahead. Yeah,
it's not
what does Hysteria Def Leppard mean to you, man?
I mean, I bought it, and because it was a monster record, right? And like you said, it was all those songs, and all those songs were on the radio. And like I said at the top of the show, that's where my musical tastes were going, to things I was hearing on KSJO. But it didn't have staying power with me. This was a moment for me, and I remember listening and liking it back then. But Def Leppard, for whatever reason, like, and I like High and Dry, like I like a lot of Def Leppard's music, but it just doesn't have the staying power that other bands did, like a Metallica. Like Metallica from that first, like, and I've never stopped being a Metallica fan. I've never stopped listening to Metallica. I've never stopped listening to the Black Crowes. I've never stopped listening to, Motley and Guns N' Roses and all those bands. But for whatever reason, Def Leppard never stuck. And I've seen them live and they're phenomenal. Had a great time when I saw them live. But just never had the stickiness in terms of my fandom, though. But no disrespect to the band or the music, because I recognize its place. And even I was in the bar and restaurant business for a long time and ran nightclubs and whatnot. Pour Some Sugar on Me is still a staple. It's still in rotation, man. Yeah. Like, you want to get all the girls on the dance floor, play that song, and there's everybody out there. You know what I mean? So it's still up there.
All right, Murf. So that was my number 4. Your 4 was Metallica. What's your number 3 1987 best rock metal album?
My number 3, I'm going to go back-to-back EPs on you, and this is where my taste in music starts to lean heavier. I mentioned at the top of the show how that moment when I listened to Appetite for the first time, how it changed my world in terms of musical taste. Well, that same cousin that turned me on to Appetite turned me on to Anthrax.
Anthrax, baby.
Anthrax. And I'm talking about the I'm the Man EP. And the reason that I chose this versus Among the Living is that the I'm the Man EP had three different versions of I'm the Man that got filthier and filthier as you went through them. You had more and more F words and F bombs in it. And I'm the Man it was such a fun song. It was like, we already had the fusion of, Aerosmith and Run DMC, but like, this is when we really started, of course, and these guys most famously did Bring the Noise with Public Enemy, but it was like, you started hearing a metal band, a thrash metal band at that, be influenced by hip hop and what was going on in the hip hop world. And so this really hit for me, man. That song in particular, I'm the Man, was phenomenal. But then as you go through the album, then they do a cover of Sabbath, Bloody Sabbath by Black Sabbath. And it's amazing. Again, you don't often hear times when the Padawan eclipses the master here. And a lot of times, live. You look at Guns N' Roses does Live and Let Die, I think is better than the Wings version. Like, there's occasionally times where a band or an artist will do a song, a cover of an absolute, legendary song, and do it better. And it's hard to listen. And I know Sabbath fans are out there going to kill me for this, but I think this version of Sabbath, Bloody Sabbath is better than the Black Sabbath version. I'm
going to agree with a cover they did later that I liked better than the first one that originally did it. And that was Got the Time. I think that was the Joe Jackson tune they covered. Do you remember that one? Remember how fast even Joe did a great fast version, but man, when they did Got the Time, I was like, hell yeah, this song's awesome. My friend's like, it's a cover. I'm like, what?
or like Faith No More does a cover of Easy, the Commodore's famous song, But anyways, I love. So then you get into Cotton and Mosh.
Yeah.
Okay. And
oh my God,
Cotton and Mosh is now that song. So Cotton and Mosh and I'm the Man, which are the last two songs, or not I'm the Man, Cotton and Mosh and I'm the Law. Those are on Among the Living. Those are the recorded versions of that. So you get I'm the Man, plus you get the 2 live versions of Cotton and Mosh and I'm the Law. And it's amazing. Like, it's Cotton and Mosh is basically, it's a punk song. Like, and that's where you hear, so like, not only is influence from hip hop from these guys, but there's a heavy punk influence and what was going on in punk rock, that super driving and like ultimately what results in thrash metal. Right. And so you got, like Anthrax, Megadeth, Slayer, and Metallica. Those are your big 4. Right. And so you really hear where that sound gets honed in that fusion of punk, the frenzy, that speed metal, like you were talking about. And again, for somebody that wasn't familiar with speed metal, wasn't familiar with thrash at the time and all that. Again, I was just, like I told you, I wasn't even that familiar with Metallica's catalog. So to hear now this on this EP, then my cousin handed me this thing and saying, here, go home and listen to this. It'll change your life pretty much. It did. I was like,
wow. Oh, I love that pick. That's
a
good.
great freaking album. Yeah.
And you're surprising me. You're like way Murf little metalhead here.
Oh yeah, I'm telling you, man, this stuff.
Okay, I want to see the Murf mosh, man.
There were 2 times in my life, and I'll just a little quick anecdote, and then we'll move on. There's 2 times in my life that my musical taste had been completely uprooted and changed. One was this year, 1987. The other one was in 1992 when I saw Skid Row, and I went to go see Skid Row. That was Slave to the Grind, and I was a big Skid Row guy. Except, and that would have been just fine on its own, except a little band from Texas called Pantera came out on the Cowboys from Hell tour, and again wrecked my brain. And I've been shaving my head ever since. Since I stopped Philip Anselmo. Like they absolutely just, I was like, whoa, like this is a whole new world of rock and roll here, and completely like migrated into that and the heavy stuff and all. But anyways, I digress. But this year, 1987, and this album or this EP was another one of those major formative, pieces of music, collections of music that form my music fandom to this day.
Great pick, man. Great pick. Pantera scared the crap out of me when I first saw their video. And it wasn't just they did, but their fans did too, because they were hardcore.
Oh man, I'm telling you, yeah. That's when you know it's good. When it kind of frightens you a little bit. You're like, or it's unexpected. You're like, wait a minute, like what the heck is this, man? Like, yeah, because and especially too, like you think about, and I don't want to make this a Pantera show, but like back in those early 90s, I mean, look, Sebastian's coming out, he's still got his long hair, and it's still it's still the early 90s, even though it's starting to go grungy, it's still very much that hair metal vibe is still what's going on with Motley and Dr. Feelgood, on the heels of that, just by a couple of years and all that kind of stuff. And then you got this band that comes out, they're all in jeans. And you know what I mean? And of course, Dimebag's got his long hair and whatnot.
It's funny though to see like the early glam version of Pantera. When you see what they look like.
Oh, it's hilarious. Yeah, nothing like what they were in Cowboys from Hell. But they reinvented themselves. Yeah. And it was combat boots and shaved heads and tattoos and and it was like, whoa, like where is it? You know what I mean? Yeah. So anyway.
Yeah, that was actually I think one of the bands that Ricky Rackman would have at the Cat House, if I remember correctly. But yeah, man, good choice. Wow. All right. So number 5 for you is Joe Satriani, Surfing with the Alien. 4, Metallica, the 598 EP, and Anthrax, I'm the Man. All right. My number 5 was Motley Crue, Girls, and my number 4 was Def Leppard, Hysteria. Now it's time to talk about, okay, let me take you back in time there, Murf, all right? When this album came out, I was oblivious to it in 87. It wasn't until, I want to say, 88, 89, I had another side to Kevin, not just the metal Kevin. I had the going to the dance club, listening to some pop music because all the hot girls were hanging out there, Kevin. Can you blame me? Yep. Keep in mind, in 87, girls listening to metal was slowly starting to gain momentum. This is when you started to realize a little bit during this time that you had to have the ballad on your album because all the hot girls were buying it. All the girls were buying it, And you had to kind of start listening to stuff the hot girls liked. I started listening to Duran Duran because the hot girls were liking it. Then I realized, oh, wait, I like Duran Duran. I would go to the clubs and listen and dance to Rock Lobster because that's where all the hot girls were. Blister in the Sun. Blue Monday by New Order. Then all of a sudden, this song comes on. And I was blown away. I'm like looking around going, who the F is that? The Cult Electric. And the song that I'm talking about is Wildflower. I'm like, who the hell is this song? You're playing the video going, who the hell is that? Oh my God. I went out and got that album right away. And I'm like, the Cult. And then someone who was like really cool with the Cult, like, hey, dude, did you know they used to be called the Southern Death Cult, man?
Yeah.
And I was like, no way. And I'm like, did you know they're from England? And they're like, no way. And I was just blown away. And this album means so much to me. This to date is my favorite Cult album. And how freaking cool do they look on that album? Ian's got the long hair and Billy Duffy still got kind of the punk haircut in this. I love this. I've seen them, I think, about 4 times. I saw them twice here locally, headlining here in Santa Barbara. I saw them open up for other bands. The last time I saw them, I think, was in 2006 in Virginia Beach, Virginia, when Matt Sorum came back to play and tour with the Cult when he stopped with Guns N' Roses. Fantastic little club, absolutely great. Love me some Cult. Peace Dog, Little Devil, and of course, oh yeah, Love Removal Machine.
Great song.
Great
Phenomenal song. Absolutely.
Do you need to talk about these guys now?
Yeah, because I mean, Love Removal Machine, great song, but these guys didn't hit for me until 1989, 2 years later, when Sonic Temple comes out. Of course, Sonic Temple gives you Firewoman.
Yeah.
Chow Baby, Sun King, way underrated song, and Sweet Soul Sister are the big songs off of there.
Great album.
Great freaking album. And that's really where I locked in on the Cult. Electric, other than Love Removal, didn't really stick with me. But Cult, again, another one of those bands. Once I kind of figured them out and was like, oh wow, these guys are great. And they're not, like some alternative band, because they weren't on the rock and roll station. So it took a minute for me to catch up to them. And by the time I did, they're never lost fandom of that band, and especially Sonic Temple.
This is one of those bands where you go. Now, when we see these popular bands break up or whatever, or come back together, and they might bring in new members because they break up for whatever reasons, tension, money, whatever, royalties, all that kind of stuff. To me, though, as long as you have Ian and Billy, you got the Cult, because there's nothing like those guys working together. And like I said, that's why I put Billy in one of my top 5 underrated guitar players of all time. He had a certain sound. When you see him play, he's got a certain swagger. I just love the sound that he gets out of his guitar, man. It's just amazing. Just amazing.
Great pick, Kev.
All right, so that is my number 3. Now we get to number 2, Murph. Who is your number 2?
All right, so I gotta go. And my last 2 probably are kind of predictable, but I was a huge Motley guy from as soon as I knew who they were, and so of course, Too Fast for Love and Shout at the Devil, and then Theater of Pain, phenomenal. Home Sweet Home, with the biggest.
10 Seconds to Love, man.
Oh my
love
gosh.
that song.
They were so great, man. But so you get to Girls, and I love Girls, because this to me is peak Motley. This is not this, and again, nothing wrong with the glam version of Motley from Theater of Pain and all that stuff. But look at that album cover. They're all in leather. They're on their Harleys. It's a little more edgy and grungy, and not in terms of musically. I don't mean that grungy, but I just mean like it's just a little more of that, Southern California, Sunset Strip. Like this to me is like peak Motley, and it's right before Dr. Feelgood, which is where they launch into the stratosphere. But like this album was massive. Obviously, the songs you listed earlier, Wild Side, Girls, Monsters. But if you go through through the album, halfway through you get to this little ditty called Nona. And as a big Beatles guy, Nona sounds like a Beatles thing. You have this like really light, airy, like just kind of like trippy, ballady thing going on. Look, I'm getting chills talking about it.
Yeah.
It's such a beautiful little like interlude amongst all this leather and metal and all this stuff. You got this, I'm out of my head. I'm not going to try to sing it, but just like this little thing, and there's a little ditty. It's so freaking good. It was the first time we'd ever heard anything like that. And not to my recollection, they hadn't done anything since. And no one was doing anything like that. To put a little, like, I don't even know who wrote it. I probably should have looked that up for the show, and I apologize I didn't. But like, what a nice little thing in there. And then at the end, you get the Jailhouse Rock. They do a live version of Jailhouse Rock and crush it. I don't know, we're talking a lot about covers tonight, but man, it's just a fun album. And of course, the big songs and the title song and everything, that's the stuff that was on the radio, and that's what's going to really, got most of the attention. But All in the Name of is a phenomenal song. You're All I Need is a death ballad. You've got that in there.
Well, if you watch that video and you listen to the lyrics, it's not happy when, you know, the title says otherwise.
Yeah, you know what I mean? It's a murder ballad. It's like, you know, Redheaded Stranger up in here. Like it's just such a freaking great album. And like I said, this to me, like this is peak Motley Crue. I think in terms of talent, not only as musicians, but songwriters. You know, I know this is like, you know, Dr. Feelgood's where they got sober and that's why, you know, one of the reasons that thing is so tight and so well done. But this album, man, I think probably I don't know, maybe I'm overshooting this point, but to me, at least in my perception of rock and roll fandom and Motley fans, this album is underrated. Like, because everyone goes to Smoking in the Boys Room and you know what I mean? And all that kind of stuff. And on Theater Pain, of course, and then Dr. Feelgood's probably their biggest album, but like, and so this is kind of lost in there.
Okay.
You know,
let me ask you this question, because you've heard the and watched the interviews where they refer to themselves that, we were a band, but we were actually a gang that would kick your ass. You know, they weren't afraid to jump in your face and throw something at you if you threw something at them on stage, or hit you with a bass over the head. And I think this album kind of epitomized that gang thing, because, you know, when they went on tour together, they were getting in scuffles. I think they were opening up for Ozzy during this time as well. Maybe that might've been a little bit earlier. I can't remember. But this is when they were like, you know, yes, we're going to kick your ass on stage, but we'll kick your ass outside afterwards.
Absolutely. I think that's a great point. And this was another version of themselves. And I think, you know, great bands do that. And because, you know, great rock and roll bands have image and marketing, and those things play into it. Again, I'm a big Beatles guy. The Beatles constantly reinvented themselves. And you look at all their different album covers, you know, you kind of started off at this, right, with the leather and denim kind of a look of Too Fast for Love. And then Shout at the Devil, clearly all that with all their spandex and the red and the flames and the pentagrams and all that. And then you get into the very glammy thing of Theater of Pain. And then now here you're going completely different. They're a completely different version of themselves. A version, frankly, it's just a bigger and badder version of what they originally started off as. And so I think it's genius, man.
Girls. What a great album.
Great album, man.
Wonderful.
Absolutely. Yeah. Wore this one out. This was fantastic.
Yeah, definitely. Well said, Murf. Love it. Okay.
And that was Nikki Sixx that wrote Nona, by the way, who's a big Beatles fan. So there you go.
Oh, very cool. Nice. All right. So number 2, Motley Crue, Girls. All right. Now, this album could have easily been my number 1 album, and it almost was. Then I realized it wasn't for a particular reason, which I will get into when I get to my number 1. But number 2, by far, is the album that I think shocked rock and metal fans. It shocked glam bands, and it combined a couple of good ingredients. Excellent musicianship, all ends of it. The writing, the playing, the look. Like, you may be pretty, but we're the real deal. Stage presence, tattoos, and definitely in my opinion, one of the best guitarists out there, my personal favorite guitarist, / Guns N' Roses, Appetite for Destruction right here. Now, I actually didn't jump onto this band right away. Okay. I'm going to save my story, as I mentioned, how I found out about Guns N' Roses, and it's actually a funny story. But I was lucky enough to get the first original cover of this album. And last year, I think it was, I actually picked up the reissue vinyl album, Murf. I picked this thing up right here. It's got the little kind of shiny cover to it. Back to it here. It's remastered. And it's got the slip case. I'm showing it here. And it shows the original band album cover, right? Oh, wait, am I holding it the right way? Sorry, here we go.
Upside down. Here we go. Yep.
Yeah, here you go. With a little bit of here, hold on. Let me.
So you're going to show the bottom part too?
Let me cover some stuff here. It was a little violent, right? And they had to go with the traditional one that you see on the screen here. But I want to show this album here. Check this out.
You know what the title of that picture is?
Which one? This is Appetite for Destruction, right?
Yeah. So they pulled the name of the album. Yeah.
Yeah, that was it called. And then you open it up, and it's got this great band album of all original members here.
Very cool.
Miss you, Izzy Stradlin. Miss you so much. And it actually came with a digital version if you want to download it too when you bought this thing.
Right.
But
Awesome.
how cool is that back cover? I mean, how often I looked at this. Slash, are you awake there, buddy? What's going on, man? You all right? Look at that. I love that.
Knee deep in Jack Daniels right there.
I know. And just a great album cover. Great album. But every song on this album, this is one of those albums you don't skip a track. You can listen to this album from front to back, man. It is just amazing. Welcome to the Jungle. It's So Easy, Night Train, Out to Get Me, Mr. Brownstone, Paradise City, My Michelle, Think About You. Sweet Child of Mine, You're Crazy, Anything Goes, and Rocket Queen. And there's a great story to that song. But that'll be covered at another podcast. Yes. So that one is my number 2, Murph. I know some people are wondering, like, well, what's number 1? Kevin, you're a big Guns N' Roses fan. You have a Guns N' Roses t-shirt. Well, I'll explain a little bit later. But yes, so that's my number 2. Murph, what is your number 1?
You're looking at it. This is it. Yeah, Appetite for Destruction is absolutely, to me, it's a slam dunk. It's not even close. And that's not to, belittle anybody else's choices. I'm not a list bully. But when it comes to the greatest albums of 1987, it's absolutely Appetite. And, Appetite did a lot of incredible things, incredible firsts. I mentioned the shift that it kind of that it planted in the rock and roll landscape in my own little world, my own little 13-year-old, 14-year-old brain. These were, you heard explicit language used openly on this album in a way that hadn't been in the past. You had bands like, even on the I'm the Man EP, you even heard in some references in there, and they start to use the F word, or they use it, and then he goes, oops, I'm sorry. Like, they're almost apologizing for the language. This band doesn't apologize for a damn thing at all. They didn't apologize for, to go back to the cover, as controversial as that original cover was.
Yep.
It actually was very apropos, because the big giant monster that's coming up to attack the attacker, that was them. That's what they felt they were. They were the ones to take out the bad element. They were going to completely go out there and eradicate what was going on. And so that's, to me, and that's a 100% of what they did. You mentioned the look of the band. They teased Axl's hair up for that first video, Welcome to the Jungle. But outside of that, like, they weren't a big hair band. Of course they had long hair and all that kind of stuff, but like, they didn't look like everybody else did. When, being an LA band and coming up on the Strip, and I know that you're highly familiar with that, and that's your neck of the woods, coming up there, you hear stories about like Metallica, like when they came up and they didn't really fit in with the bands that were on the Strip at the time. So they bailed and they went to Northern California, where I'm from, and really found their voice and their music in Northern California. Guns N' Roses wasn't doing anything that anybody else was doing on the Strip at the time either, but they didn't leave. They just said, F them. We're just going to do our thing, and completely stood out from the other bands that were around at the time. And again, that music that they recorded for this album completely stands out. It's completely unique, not only in terms of tone, but in terms of musicianship. But the overall rock mystique, they were edgy, they were hardcore, they were dangerous, as we talked about earlier. There's so many things about this band. They didn't talk about getting high. They were talking about using heroin. They were talking about, using dope. They were talking about porn. They weren't talking about making love. They were talking about effing. You know what I mean? They were using, I'm so hoping I'm not stealing any of your thunder here, but like, you listen to the song Rocket Queen, like, there was a recorded live sex act in that song. There's things that are so like edgy and groundbreaking about this stuff. And again, with the transparency of their world that they were talking about, you hear a lot of like hip hop artists will talk about it like a lot, that like, they're just rapping about what's going on in the street, what's going on in their neighborhoods. They're just being a reflection or a voice for what's going on in their world.
And how dirty Hollywood was.
Yes,
and how crappy it was to be there when you were trying to make it, sleeping on the floor, taking drugs and selling drugs. And, it was just dirty and grimy story, music, writing, telling, basically.
Absolutely. That's what this album does so brilliantly. It just gives you a little, snapshot of what that world looked like. And, I could go on and on about every song. I won't, but Rocket Queen is my absolute favorite. It's written as a thank you letter to this woman that was that ran a freaking brothel and took care of Axl for many, many years while they were up and coming. And so that was basically his song to her. That's my favorite. I'll skip over the big radio songs because everybody knows plenty about those. But My Michelle was a song that Axl wrote for his girlfriend, Michelle. And a lot of his bandmates, when he submitted the song, they were like, well, don't you want to kind of like lighten this thing up a little bit? And he was like, no, I don't think so. And he took it to her and he was like, hey, this is what I've written about you because this is what your world looks like. And she was like, awesome. Thank you. Thank you for not trying to sweeten it up. Thank you for telling it like it really is. And so there's truth to this. Right. You know what I mean? And when you're singing about things that are true, and that's not to begrudge, the bands that do big story songs and big visions or whatever. But again, when you're talking about real world, tangible people in your life, it really comes through. Mr. Brownstone about using heroin. And the band will say often that it's not about their heroin use. It was a reflection of the people that they were around all the time. Night Train, but walking down the streets of freaking Sunset Strip, drinking Night Train because they only had $5 and the whole band could get drunk on Night Train. You know what I mean? Yeah. So like these songs are just, one of the best lyrics. I'll say some of the curse words, but I've got a rattlesnake suitcase under my arm. I'm a mean machine. I'm drinking gasoline, and honey, you can make my motor hum.
Yep.
Like, come on, man. It's so good. This album is just an absolute classic, one of the absolute all-time rock albums, and certainly way past 1987. Yes, for 1987, but probably for all of the 80s and in the conversation for greatest rock albums of all time.
Well said, man. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. And we're going to revisit that album later here on the Hair Metal Podcast because we got a lot more to say about that. So Murf, you see my number one, right? Don't spoil it yet. Were you surprised by it?
No, I can't. I haven't. I haven't scrolled to it yet, so I'm actually.
Cool.
I'm remaining spoiler free on this.
All right, cool. Well, it may surprise people, but there's a reason why this album is number one for me, and this there's several reasons. There's several reasons why I love this album. I went through a little punk phase as well, and when you're going to talk about punk, you might talk about, of course, the Sex Pistols, Ramones, New York Dolls, Generation X, and their ex-singer, Billy Idol. Billy Idol, Vital Idol, is my favorite album of 1987. And yes, it's a greatest hits album, but there's reasons why I love this album. And it was the weirdest thing. The way it kind of came about was, I was kind of a cassette guy at first, like we all were growing up. But I can remember the first few CDs I actually owned. And this was one of the first few. That one, AC/DC's Who Made Who, Styx, Mr. Roboto. What was the other one? There's another one I can't remember. But when you started upgrading from your cassettes, Murf, to CDs, do you remember when you did that?
Oh yeah, very distinctly, yes.
Do you remember your first CD that you ever bought?
Oh my gosh. Give me a minute. I'll think of it here.
Okay. Yeah. I think mine was AC/DC, Who Made Who. And it was this one right here, Billy Idol, Vital Idol. And I was always a big Billy Idol fan. And the thing that I love about this album is that I bought it on CD, and I've always had it around my CD players. I've had more than one copy. I'd never bought this on cassette. I actually never bought the vinyl. Always had on CD. When I got my first car, it was in my 6 CD changer. Remember the changers you have to pull out? And I had like a pickup truck, and I had the
Logic,
pick.
maybe.
I had the pickup truck, but the CD changer was behind the seat, and so you had to put 6 CDs in there and just kind of forget about it. And if you wanted to change it, you had to open up the seat and like pull the little changer out. That's the way it was, man. But Vital Idol to me was so important because it was such a good driving album. It was a good riding your bike to album because the songs that were on this album were all remixes and extended versions. You had White Wedding. 8.5 minutes on this one, man. One of my favorite songs for the longest time was Dancing with Myself, originally done by, what was it? Tony James, I guess. Yeah, if I remember correctly. No, it was part of his earlier band, I guess. 5 and almost 6 minutes. Flesh for Fantasy, 7 minutes. Catch My Fall, almost 5. Moni Moni, the cover by Tommy James and the Shondells. 5-minute version. Murf, do you remember listening to Moni Moni in the clubs, but there was the alternate club sing-along mix during that? Do you remember that?
All too well, my friend.
Moni Moni, get laid, get effed.
I was in the bar and restaurant business for a long time, and along with Pour Some Sugar on Me, Moni Moni is a staple, yes.
Yes, and then I freaking love the Exterminator mix, Hot in the City. During the summertime, driving a long distance, the way that thing starts out. And the reason why this is my favorite one is because it always stayed in my freaking car. When I went like on a trip, I would bring this album with me and put it in my rental car. I've lost 3 burned copies of this CD because I learned after the first one when I left the original copy in my rental car. I just burned CDs. And it would do it that way. And then eventually, I think around 10 years ago, I updated and made Vital Idol 2.0 and added like later songs that he did, so I got those on there. Vital Idol, a great album. But when this album came out, I was just all about Billy Idol. I never saw him live until later. And it wasn't until a band came out to capitalize on the whole hair metal rock scene, but it was actually a really good album called Atomic Playboys that was spearheaded by Billy Idol's underrated guitar player. Because if you listen to that podcast, Steve Stevens, Billy Idol's guitar player, released an album called Atomic Playboys, and it had the H.R. Giger album cover on there. And this was all Steve Stevens. He wrote all the songs here, but it was a band, and he had a lead singer singing the songs. And I was like, wait a minute, that's Steve Stevens. He played with Billy Idol, and thus became a Steve Stevens fan. And I've only seen Billy Idol once, Murph, was in Virginia Beach, Virginia. Small club. He's doing club things. And I think this was in 2000, I think it was, or it might've been 2003. I can't remember. And this was when Steve Stevens joined him again on the tour. And Billy Idol was like, he was getting clean again, getting in shape, went shirtless right away after the first song. Steve Stevens took him about 3 songs, took his shirt off, but I got to see Steve Stevens jamming in his solo. Then he did a solo on his acoustic guitar. Blown away, man. And this album is still in my car, but it's my own custom Vital Idol 2.0 version of it. The original is in over there because I will never take an original copy and lose it in a rental car ever again. But I love Vital Idol. What were your thoughts on Vital Idol, if any?
Yeah, I wasn't ever a huge Billy Idol guy. I loved all the songs that we saw on MTV and Rebel Yell is a blast to play on like Rock Band. If there's one that's a fun karaoke song, that's a great one. And every time that we do it, I'm always standing on the couch singing it whenever we do it here at the Murf Fan Cave. But always appreciated Billy as an artist, and Steve Stevens, as you mentioned, I guess he's one of those guys too that like once I started getting into like really like geeking out about rock and roll and watching documentaries and whatnot, you realize that songwriting and musicianship and whatnot, that guy's a legend, man. Like he's absolutely, and I'm so happy to hear what you had to say about him performing live, because like when all those classic riffs and all the song structure and all that stuff, that's all him. Like that guy probably way underrated, frankly.
For those of you that don't know, there's a certain sequel movie that came out this year that's doing quite well called Top Gun Maverick. Well, he's the one that does the solo in the original Top Gun theme.
Oh, nice, dude. Good pull.
He won a Grammy for that, and he might have won an Oscar. I can't remember if he won the Oscar because it was nominated, but he definitely won a Grammy for that because it won for Best Song Soundtrack with Harold Haltermeyer, I think is his name.
Haltermeyer.
So wait, say his name again.
Isn't it Faltermeyer?
Faltermeyer, yes. Thank you. But that is Steve Stevens.
No kidding. See,
solo.
Just you even saying that, I can hear it in my head.
Yes.
You know what I mean? That's legit, dude. See, that's what I'm saying. That's way underrated.
Yeah.
Amazing talent.
And if you go look up, I think it was the Professor of Rock. This guy's got a YouTube show, and
that guy's awesome.
Shout out
Professor of Rock. Absolutely. Shout out Professor of Rock. That guy has an amazing YouTube series.
He interviews bands and rock stars about their hits and the origin of them. And he interviews Steve Stevens about that and the Top Gun theme and all that kind of stuff. So make sure you check that out. Professor of Rock. Oh, that's cool, man. So yeah, there we go. Vital Idol, my favorite right there. So Murf, we've got a little long. I appreciate you hanging in here, man. But I got one last question for you. I teased it earlier. Okay. Before we head on out of here. Okay. Of course, this is the 87 best rock albums of all time. But I got to ask you, the 80s, the 70s, even the 60s, there have been some great album covers, right? A lot of them were like painted or some great photography. And it really kind of started in the 60s and the 70s. You got a lot of great artists doing famous art for rock stars and artists. And I just love album covers specifically. For me, I'm more of an 80s guy. But in 87, we've teased a bunch of them here. What album, even though it may not be your favorite album, which band in 87, in your opinion, had the best album cover?
I gotta go with, and this might be a controversial take, but I got to go with the original album cover for Appetite for Destruction. It's because what it depicts and the violence that it depicts and the fact that the band, they're choosing to be the aggressor to the aggressor, nothing spells Guns N' Roses more to me than that crazy metal monster is what they saw themselves as, because the other robot, the bad, evil robot that's committing the heinous crime, is another metal figure, right? Yep. And now the bigger, baddest metal figure is going to take out that one. And that's what they saw themselves at, and that's why they chose this as the original cover and then chose to name the album at. So but then shout out their choice for the alternate. A very classic, again, album cover with of course the title of the album with the band's name, and then their visages, their skull visages on the cross. Which, I mean, and
Axl gets a tattoo of it.
And Axl gets a tattoo, but I mean, it's like so classic, man. I'm like, you see that, and you could take all the wording away. And that's one of those things. If you saw just that cross with those heads, you know exactly what it is. You know exactly. You could even probably just look at one of those individually and know exactly what it is and where it came from. And especially as Raider fans, right? We're a sucker for that stuff.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, Murf, you didn't steal my thunder. I'm just going to say, because you said it best, I agree. Guns N' Roses' Appetite for Destruction, for everything that you just said, that it had the alternate cover that was banned. I actually have that album, but I have it framed, have it kind of tucked away. And it's not one of those albums, you don't want to like have it hanging over when you have your parents over, or the new girlfriend, if you're single,
right.
But I remember I almost lost that at a garage sale. I had put some albums out to sale because I was getting ready to move from California over to the East Coast. And I had that in there. I thought I took it out. And this guy says, "Hey, how much do you want for this?" I'm like, "Oh yeah, let me see that." Nothing. I saved it. I'm sorry, dude. That wasn't supposed to be in there. Yeah. So yeah, well said. I agree for all the reasons that you said. And this is the album that basically kicked rock and roll in the ass. with attitude, rawness, realism for all the reasons that you said. And the album cover, both of them epitomize all those reasons. So yeah. Well, Murf, man, this has been a great discussion, man. I really appreciate you. Yeah, I really appreciate you coming on, man. And like I said, man, we've been discussing the top 1987 best rock metal albums. Our 35th anniversary is hair metal. And I just want to give you a chance for any final thoughts.
Yeah, final thoughts. So you asked me what my first CD was. I remembered it was Led Zeppelin's In Through the Outdoor, because I had all of the other Led Zeppelin cassettes leading up, and I didn't have In Through the Outdoor yet. And so I went and bought that on CD. And
I got that one later through Columbia House. I got sucked into that cult, and I got that, and I got like a bunch of other 60s bands and the Doors, but I got that one.
Perfect. Good deal, man. Good deal. Yeah. So, thank you again for having me on. First and foremost, this has been an absolute blast. Love geeking out with you on metal and on music and on all of our, I love it because you can be a nerd about so many things. You can be a nerd about being a football fan. You can be a nerd about, genre and movies and comic books, but you can be a nerd about music too. And you could definitely put me in that camp as a nerd for music. And this era was such a formative time for me as a very young teenager. And so it was fun going down. I would say it was fun going down memory lane, but this stuff is still kind of in my rotation of things I listen to. I listen to Appetite for Destruction, whether I'm at the gym or whatever else. This stuff is kind of always, in the air. And so it was really fun though to connect back with it and to talk about it, encapsulate it into one period of time of 1987. So thank you again, Kevin, for having me, man. And I look forward to doing it again one of these days.
A most triumphant return to the Hair Metal Podcast, and I'm glad you could join me with this, Murf. Yeah, exactly. And we're going to be revisiting some 1987 albums. We're just going to talk about that album. And Murf is going to come back. We're going to talk about an album. I got my friend Shan who's going to come back. We're going to talk about an album. And so we want to celebrate these and take a little bit deep dive into it. But first of all, we need some contact information. Let's go ahead and let's get on out of here. This is the Hair Metal Podcast here on the Fandom Podcast Network. And like I said, please join our Hair Metal Podcast fandom group. And also please join us on Twitter at Hair Metal Cast. You can also email us at hairmetalpodcast at gmail.com. And also, if you're listening to this, check out the video we're doing of this. You get to see all the cool album covers that we've been talking about. And you can see our handsome faces. Maybe our faces are made for video. We're trying to still figure that out. We'll see. But please subscribe to our Fandom Podcast Network. And also, our audio podcast is at fpnet.podbean.com. My name is Kevin Reitzel. I'm on Twitter and Instagram at Spartan_Phoenix. And of course, you can also reach me at Hair Metal Cast. Murf, where can we find you?
You can find me on the Twitters at _Murf, or you can find our show anywhere on Instagram, on the TikToks, anywhere just by searching for at Raiders Fan Radio. You can just type it into Google. You can even ask your Alexa or other internet connected device to play Raiders Fan Radio, and it'll pop it right up there, because you can find us on Spotify and iHeartRadio and Stitcher and anywhere you can find a podcast. So if you're a Raider fan, definitely check us out, man. We appreciate you. And remember, even if you don't like the Raiders, just subscribe to the show. You don't even have to listen to it. Just have it in your list of things that populate, because I promise you this, any support that we get, it opens up different opportunities for our show. And 100% of the money that we get, we give it to our nonprofit, the One Nation Foundation. So know that by subscribing to us, you're actually supporting a very, very good charity and a good cause by doing so. So thank you to all of you that have done it already. And for those of you that will do that in the future, thank you.
And I can confirm that every single cent that Murf and his Raiders Fan Radio makes, all of it goes to charity. And it's amazing the amount of money that you generate, and you just immediately turn it around and give it away. And that's a wonderful thing to do. And I commend you for doing that, Murf. So
appreciate you, Kev. Well, it's only because of our amazing supporters. We're just the vessels. We're the knuckleheads that turn on cameras and microphones. And, it's all of our listeners, all of our supporters. And we're on track right now to give $8,000 away to the Fred Bolitnikoff Foundation this year. That's our goal. We give to numerous charities throughout the year, but we're looking to give that that'll be our largest donation this year, and that would be double of what we gave them this last year. So it's just incredibly generous folks that are our supporters. So thank you for the platform.
You're welcome, man. The Hair Metal Podcast is on the Fandom Podcast Network, where we have a lot of podcasts on there. I think we're up to like 12 or 13. And
I was going to say, you guys need to get more diversity in your shows here, Kevin. You just don't have enough on the network.
But I want to give a shout out to my buddy Adam O'Brien in Australia, who's actually been on the podcast for Hair Metal. We talked about Def Leppard. And we talked about their albums and stuff. So make sure you check him out. He has a show called The Lethal Mullet, where he talks about 80s, 90s, and beyond action movies. And he's pumping them out there. We got Type 40, or Dan Handley, who does our Doctor Who podcast. We got a bunch of others on there, so make sure you check that out. But please support us. Give us some reviews. Just search Fandom Podcast Network if you like what you're doing here, or comment down below. And as like Murf said, subscribe. Give us likes. We appreciate that. And also visit our TeePublic store. You can get a Hair Metal t-shirt and mugs and stuff, as well as logos from all of our other shows. And you guys got something. You guys got this similar thing too, right, Murf?
Yeah, we have a TeePublic. You can just go to our website, RaidersFanRadio.com. Then just click the gear button, and it'll take you to either Fanatics, where you can get official Raiders gear, or it'll take you to our TeePublic site. And actually, shame on me. This is how bad I am at self-promotion. I should have had a picture of the latest that our latest shirt that we've done. Let me see if I can find it super quick here, because it will be attractive to those that are metal fans and also AC/DC fans. So hopefully you can see this okay. We did a shirt and it says DADC. I don't know if that, gosh darn it.
Nice.
So that's for Devontae Adams and Derek Carr, and it's the AC/DC logo with the Raiders shield behind it. Darn it, it's too blurry. But anyways, if you go check it out, our TeePublic site, it's on there, and you can grab it.
Very cool. Yeah, I saw that, man. I was like, dude, that's pretty cool. Thanks, pretty
man.
Cool.
Thank you.
Might have to pick up one of those. Gonna have to call that the blackjack shirt too, because when those two score,
let's go 17-4, baby.
There you go. Oh man, Murf, thanks again, man. We really appreciate you coming on, brother. Looking forward to talking some Raiders with you down the line and getting you on the show again.
Absolutely, man. And same thing. Can't wait to have you back on Raiders Fan Radio.
All right, let's close out. Again, I'd like to thank Murf, our special guest, and I hope you've enjoyed this episode of Hair Metal, talking about the best rock metal albums of 1987, 35 years ago. I'm Kevin. Join us next time here on the Fandom Podcast Network for another episode of the Hair Metal Podcast, where, we're going to tease up our hair, rock out in that leather motorcycle jacket, and, maybe put on some ripped jeans and those lip service attire. You guys remember lip service? I sure do. I had those pants. But remember, every rose has its thorn, and on a steel horse we will ride. Hair Metal lives! Murf, rock on, buddy.